Welcome to the January 28th, 2025 meeting of the Planning Commission. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you could please rise and join me in the saluting the flag. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, can we get the roll call, please?
Vice Chair Barber.
Here.
Commissioner Maccaro.
Here.
Commissioner Spear.
Here.
Chair Weiler.
Here.
Commissioner Jester.
Here.
Commissioner Stevie.
Here.
Commissioner Correll.
Here. We'll go ahead and move on to approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion, changes?
Move approval of the minutes.
Hold on 1 second. There is one minor change. This would be on page 8 of this agenda. It's down just above current business on the commission action. On the ayes for that commission action, we have Maccaro and Correll for the ayes, and it actually should be Stevie and Jester. We could get that change made. So I'll move to approve with the changes that I just suggested.
Second.
Get the roll call.
All right. Vice Chair Barber.
Yes.
Commissioner Maccaro.
Abstain.
Commissioner Spear.
Abstain.
Chair Weiler.
Yes.
Commissioner Jester.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevie.
Yes.
Commissioner Correll.
Abstain.
All right.
We'll move on to written communications. Are there any written communications? I guess none.
Nope.
It's this time in the public hearing that if we'll go on to oral communications. Any oral communications?
No, none received.
None. It is this time, as a part of the Planning Commission, if anybody wishes to speak on a non-agenda item, this would be the time to go ahead and speak. Seeing nobody wishing to speak, we'll move on to public hearings. Public hearing PL 230438, and the rest of those for the Bear Valley Classical Academy expansion. And Mr. Ringler, if you please take it away.
Point of order, Chair Weiler, we could ask for disclosures first.
Thank you. Any disclosures?
Yeah, I think I need to recuse myself from this one. I have far too many ties to that high school to be impartial. Where should I go? On my car?
That is a great
That's a good
question.
question. Not in the right room. Is there a spot you can go?
There's the hallway.
I mean, just in the hallway and think about what you've done.
Carrie, you have my cell, right?
What's that?
You have my cell, right?
Yeah.
I'll just sit in my car right outside, just text me.
Okay.
Cool.
Apologies. for
Sorry.
Facilities
That's fine.
here.
I'd rather not sit in the hallway. Thanks, guys.
So do you need me to
Thank you.
disclose, or do you do that? With respect to the email communication?
You're only disclosing if you have an interest that you need to disclose. You don't need to disclose communications with staff, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, because given our communication, I wanted to make sure that the email correspondence was noted for the record with respect to clarification around the traffic questions I asked, so.
Okay, that's not technically something you need to disclose, but it's fine if you
Okay.
want to note that you've had
Yeah,
communications with staff.
Given that it went to all the parties that it went to, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I had the same email response I got, but that would be my only disclosure. All right, any other disclosures? Seeing none, Mr. Ryan?
Thank you, Chair Weiler, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alex Rangel. I'm Assistant Planner for the City of Escondido's Planning Division. And tonight I am presenting to you items PL230438, PL240340, and PL240341, which is a request for a conditional use permit modification, a major plot plan, and a major design review for Classical Academy's expansion at 2950 Bear Valley Parkway. The request before you for your consideration, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2025-02, which is approving the conditional use permit modification and the child permits for the major plot plan and major design review for this project. As a project background, the 5.24 acre 2-parcel site is bounded by Bear Valley Parkway to the west and Canyon Road to the southeast of the property. The surrounding property uses include residential uses to the north and northeast, religious facility to the east, a senior living facility to the south, and Bear Valley Middle School to the west. The subject property is addressed again as 2950 Bear Valley Parkway. It's located in the southeast region of the city under the general plan land use designation of Estate 2 and the zoning of residential estates, which typically provide for a rural setting for family life in single family residential development and limited development for the uses necessary and incidental to single-family living. The subject property initially was developed under a conditional use permit in 1976, which approved the repurposing of a single-family dwelling to a preschool and a daycare facility in the southern parcel, which included maintenance and residential facilities for staff as caretaker facilities. This CUP was modified multiple times over the next few years, with the final major modification in 1983, which expanded the property and the Montessori school and the property to the northern parcel, which included elementary education property under conditional use permit 8346 CUP. In 2006, Classical Academy moved into the facility as part of their expansion throughout the city. The CUP was reviewed by staff and the Director of Community Development at the time in 2006, which included some minor modifications which were deemed to be consistent with the current provisions, which allowed for staffing and educational services provided. The existing campus at Bear Valley Parkway and Classical Academy's primary educational facility servicing students from transitional kindergarten through 8th grade. The applicant, Classical Academy, has submitted a request for the following entitlements. First, a conditional use permit modification to expand their educational services and operational components for the facility. Second, a major plot plan, which will be for the physical site development and site design to include a new multi-purpose educational building, repurposing of the existing residential structures on site to additional classroom, and the installation of additional storage containers on site. And finally, this will be a major design review, which is for the design and the architectural style of the new multi-purpose building. First, I'd like to speak to you regarding the conditional use permit modification, which is in front of you today. Classical Academy has requested the following increases to their educational component. First, an increase to their maximum staff on site from 30 persons to 70. And second, an increase in their student count with 2 provisions. First, on-site capacity from 400 students to 505. And second, for a total enrollment of 1,230 students. And designation, as a point of clarification, the designation for the hours of operation were originally not designated in the conditional use permit. However, they will now be designated for Monday through Friday for educational services from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. The grades, transitional kindergarten through 8th grade, will remain unchanged as part of this conditional use permit. To provide some additional clarification on their student count, the difference between on-site and in total enrollment. Classical Academy currently leverages what they call a combination model for educational programming, which includes on-site programs at the campus, as well as methods of home study in cooperation with the family care providers at their homes. With Classical Academy providing a total of 1,230 enrollments for students, the total number of students on site and on capacity will not exceed 505. This integrated model of flexibility allows Classical Academy to provide for additional personal attention to their existing student count while they are on site and to future student enrollment. With the increased staffing capacity, Classical Academy will be able to provide better teacher-to-student ratios on the property and with their educational model, providing for better education for Escondido student population. The combination of the education model will be further explained by the applicant of your request, who is prepared to answer any questions regarding the model if the commission is necessary. Next, I would like to speak to you in regards to the plot plan and the site design. The applicant has requested the following components for a major plot plan involving new construction and land use conversion. First, the development of a two-story, approximately 6,600 square foot multi-purpose educational building. Second, the conversion of approximately 2,100 square feet of previously residential uses on site to additional classroom space, identified as buildings A and G on the site plans provided to you. And the installation of 2 cargo containers on site for use for additional storage space for educational materials. Here you can see the floor plan for the multi-purpose educational building. The first floor will be used primarily for students, including a maker creative studio for students for creative and art education, a multi-purpose room for mixed educational uses, and health and conference offices for students and faculty. The second floor will include administrative offices, conference rooms, and office space working for staff and students alike. Second, we have the additional floor plan provided for the conversions of space within the existing structures on site. Will be utilized as additional classroom areas throughout the facilities, and again, they are just processing and repurposing of these areas with the conditional use permit limitations and the plot plan limitations on site. The plot plan will enshrine the change of use and ensure that future occupancy procedures through our building division and our fire department will be followed through our conditions of approval. The cargo containers on site will be storing additional items for the school, including books, furniture, and other ancillary equipment. The cargo containers will not be permitted for use for educational purposes or occupied by staff or students. They will meet all requirements of the Escondido zoning code. Finally, for the purposes of your review, we have the design review component for the project. The proposed multi-purpose building will be visible primarily from the Canyon Road frontage for the project site. The frontage shown here on the south and east elevations that you see on your screen include architectural elements to include a parapet roof, additional roof articulation with design elements of the Santa Barbara Mission architectural style. This style is a derivative of the Mediterranean style of historical architecture, which allows for regional interpretations of the new traditional Mediterranean style. Style includes such elements as aluminum window siding, composite clay Spanish tile, arched doors and window styles, open air windows allowing for light penetration in open air indoors, and interwoven aluminum framing to provide for articulation with design. The applicant has provided the attached references for inspiration for the style and design of the structures, showing an example of the existing structure on site on the top of the screen here, as well as in comparison to buildings of similar design which the architect was striving to achieve. The project has been initially reviewed by staff prior to the night's meetings. While the design departs somewhat from the existing architecture of the property with regards to window design, pitch, and height, staff feels that the proposed changes to the new multi-purpose educational building will be sufficiently complementary to the existing structure. As a part of the project review, the Staff Development Committee reviewed this project against the city's general plan, our zoning code, and our development standards. The project is consistent with multiple components of the city's general plan, to include the city's land use element and the community health and service element, providing educational facilities adjacent to residential properties, and supporting additional capacity for staff and student accounts. The project is in conformance with the city's zoning code and pertinent development standards, meeting the criteria required for development within residential zones, including cargo containers, and the process and requirements required in Article 61 for conditional use permits and plot plans. Additionally, the project is consistent with the goals and the application of design review standards, which is brought to your board today as part of a larger discretionary project for your review. And as part of the land use review, additional staff and student capacity, the applicant submitted a traffic scoping agreement in accordance with the city's transportation impact analysis guidelines. The project's net average daily trip increase screens below the local mobility analysis guidelines for new development under 200 average daily trips, or ADT, which is below the front level of service screening threshold as well as vehicle miles traveled for the criteria, and thus falls below the city's threshold for further shift. The project also provides adequate parking, loading, and unloading areas for staff and students, with full details outlined in your provided staff report. Parking on site is also provided in both the southern and northern areas of the project site. And per Article 39 of our off-street parking requirements of the zoning code, elementary education provides 1 parking space per staff member. The project currently provides 70 total parking spaces, meeting the minimum requirements of the zoning code. The project qualifies under the California Environmental Quality Act Exemption Guidelines Section 15303 for new construction and conversion of small structures. The exemption allows for projects to develop under 10,000 square feet of floor area within an urbanized area. The project proposes a total of approximately 9,000 square feet of new use, including the 6,600 square foot multi-purpose building and the conversion of 2,100 square feet of the residential to classroom and the 600 square feet cargo container installation, falling under the threshold for further approval. Immediately prior to this meeting, staff received one public comment, which has been provided to you on your desk, and I believe additionally communicated to you by our city planner, which is in opposition, which is provided again to you at your table. Based on the analysis and presented of this staff report in this presentation, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve Resolution 2025-02, approving the conditional use permit modification, major plot plan, and major design review for the project. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff and the applicant are available for any and all questions from the commission. Thank you.
Any questions from the Planning Commission of staff?
So,
Commissioner Stevie.
with respect to the parking situation, I understand that the current requirements are met, but just barely, right? So you need, according to city requirements, you need 70 spots for 70 staff. That's correct? I understood that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the city's current standards are, at the end of the day, we don't require any parking for any parents that might be showing up or any guests of the school or anyone else. In other words, we're looking at a situation where ostensibly everyone else non-staff who comes to this place will not have a place to park unless they're off-site.
That is correct. The current requirements for our zoning code for elementary schools specifically identifies parking requirements for staffing capacity. Additionally, elementary schools do need to provide adequate loading and unloading facilities on site, which are
What
currently
constitutes an adequate loading or unloading facility?
This is usually referred to by our traffic engineer as part of the traffic scoping agreement and review. And I believe our traffic engineer, Craig Williams, did approve the project for weather.
Based on the average trip, daily average trips?
That I am unaware, and I believe Mr. O'Donnell might be able to speak more.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it really didn't get analyzed once it's screened out
Right.
for both VMT, vehicle miles traveled, as well as, local.
The average daily
Yeah,
trips?
yeah.
Which our threshold is 200, and they came in at 194?
Yeah, 194, 186, something, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, it's not uncommon for schools to screen out. I think what's perceived a lot of times as a traffic volume issue is actually using more of a temporary parking and drop-off pickup congestion in most cases. So, yeah.
Do you or anyone else on staff have a response to this, who, I don't see a name on here.
There's no name.
It's a Bird.
David
David Bird.
David Brooks.
David Brooks. So does anyone have a response to David Brooks' concern, which is during the acute hours of pickup and drop-offs, there is not easy access on Canyon Road for emergency response vehicles, and that concern is heightened by the fact that there are senior facilities nearby to which emergency response vehicles would need to respond, presumably in a greater volume than would be normal for traditional residents.
Yeah. I mean, we visit all of the schools. I mean, many of our schools, especially the first week of school, the complaints roll in. You got to train the parents. And if a school in the second week back to school, we're still hearing complaints, we usually have to go out and take a look. So we're very familiar with just about every elementary school's operation. And, I would say we have not witnessed that kind of double parking or whatever that it would take to block an emergency vehicle. It's residential street width, so you've got cars parking poorly on both sides, so, say 8 feet taken out. That leaves you 20 feet down the middle clear. We've had schools where double parking occurs, and usually working with the principal, and in the worst cases, maybe PD's presence a couple of times, that goes away. But this particular location has really not had that issue. What we've seen is in the mornings where it coincides with the peak, and so Bear Valley's, the signal's getting as much time as it can southbound. The left turns, it can take a couple cycles to get out with a left turn out of either Canyon or the Bear Valley Middle School across the street. The left turns run together, so.
And 25% increase in the trips made to that school, what do you forecast would be the impact?
Yeah, so you'd cut that, I mean, for each peak hour, you'd cut that in half, you know, the 100, so basically, you know, 100 trips in each peak hour, peak period. In the drop-off, yeah, it might stack a, you know, a person. Right now, I think we've seen is maybe 2 cycles to get out left, and it might go to 3. So going from 3 minutes to 4.5 minutes or so to get out.
And what about backing up onto Bear Valley or backing up Canyon Road?
Yeah, I mean, they stack along the curb and bring them through. I don't anticipate, but it really wasn't analyzed. I just can't say that we've had
Right,
it,
this is
it
speculation
screened out.
because it was
Yeah.
under the 200.
Yeah.
And I will just add,
Yeah.
Commissioner Stevie, that as part of the Staff Development Committee review that all of our entitlement applications undergo, our fire department is one of the reviewing departments who look at the project descriptions, the materials that are submitted, and I'll defer to Alex in confirmation, but fire did review this project and approved their internal review of it, saying they didn't have concerns with regard to the increased student enrollment and the potential for emergency egress and ingress on Canyon. So,
On Canyon specifically.
well, as it relates to the project in totality, so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so that's helpful because I could see them reviewing the project and saying that they don't have concerns with, like, I mean, the layout of the buildings themselves and everything seems great. I mean, it's going to be, in my estimation, it would really beautify that particular campus. But I am struggling to see how this doesn't create a serious traffic concern. So in the fire department's opinion, does EPD review it as well, or just fire department?
So, did EPD,
Yes, this project was submitted to our Escondido Police Department for review. They did not have any concerns for any sort of services provided to the property.
And
Nor
no,
did they
no
require
concerns
anything.
about students, you know, maybe crossing, because there's a big empty, kind of quasi-empty parking lot across the street,
Right.
which I'm envisioning becomes the spillover, right? Now you got students crossing Canyon in a hypothetical, a probabilistic situation where parents can't park on site because staff has fully filled up the parking lot, which previously had 40 open spots if everyone from staff was there. And I recognize that, again, you know, there is a minimum sort of standard that's met, but like, they're just clearing like, boy, are they squeaking through, right? And that's fine, that's all well and good until, you know, people who actually have to experience this start coming up with their workarounds, kids crossing streets, parents backing up onto Canyon. Was there at any point in time ever a discussion between staff and the applicant with respect to if we needed to expand parking or if we needed to figure out a way to handle spillover traffic, where would that go? Or was that conversation not introduced because that, you know, those minimum standards were met?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Not really in conjunction with this application, but about 18 months ago, maybe a little more, Classical Academy, you know, approached us and made it known that they had worked out some kind of an agreement with the St. Timothy's Church across the street to use it for parking. It's not, I don't think it's a formalized, it could go away, but With that information, they requested that we provide a high visibility crosswalk from that corner, from Gretna Green and Canyon. And so we did so, I think probably about April or May of last year. So that's in place specifically for that. And it's our, and part of that discussion, and what we've seen since is they man that crosswalk in the key periods of time. So they have staff out there, you know, stopping, helping stop cars and cross students. Another thing about the, kind of more speaking to the letter by Mr. Bird or Burks. Burks.
Bird.
Bird. Okay. Canyon Road does, although the everyday traffic cannot go out another way, there are multiple, at least one, if not multiple, emergency connections to Mary Lane out the other direction. So I'm just saying that is there also to be utilized just by the fire.
There are no public access exits other than Canyon Road.
Right. The public, that's true. The public cannot come and go through those, but fire could, you know, open those up, either evacuate people or access from that side if they needed to, so.
May I ask a question of, thank you, this is all very helpful. Either Veronica or Dare. Is it within the scope of this commission's ability tonight to require, as a part of the conditional use permit, some sort of agreement where if during school hours they intend to use this high visibility crosswalk, that they man that crosswalk? Because right now it seems all very informal, and you know, I'm glad that they're looking out for their students. I'm not surprised. It's a very good school. But I feel like if we're all going to say, hey, look, you know, there's this traffic situation, especially I'm very concerned about kids crossing the crosswalk. Can we make it part of the conditional use permit that they have someone there?
So I think that because the history that Owen just spoke to, where the school approached the city asking for the crosswalk, there is a nexus between the school's operation and this crosswalk, and so unless Dare has any legal concerns, I think it's fully within the purview to condition that they manage that crosswalk during their pickup and drop-offs.
Okay. And what recourse, if any, does the city have if we find ourselves in a situation where Canyon becomes functionally unusable by residents as a result of a pickup or drop-off line spilling up into Canyon?
Sure. So Article 61, Division 1, which governs conditional use permits, has a section that allows for city-initiated review of conditional use permits that have been granted to be modified, revoked, suspended. So it does require a city initiation to do so, but there is a process where if a use is operating outside the purview of their conditional use permit or is having impacts that were not anticipated, it can be reviewed and opened back up.
So this would fall under the not anticipated category?
Theoretically,
Hypothetically?
yeah.
Right. But it would need to be triggered internally by city staff?
It'd need to be triggered by the city council typically.
Okay, that feels like a very high barrier.
Well, historically, when this has happened, city staff is a data point to the council on whether there is a recommendation to do so. So typically, city staff receive the complaints, we receive the public feedback on what's occurring, or our staff members experience it, right? PD, fire, et cetera. And so those data points eventually will get brought up to council in a public forum with recommendations to open the conditional use permit for modification, revocation, or suspension. So it isn't just solely, it could be solely a council member or the city council requesting it, but there are other avenues. City council just has to be the body to make the action.
Right.
I think the other thing I would just add before, you know, it may even got to that point, you know, we would be in contact with the school. You know, we've gotten to know the principals. We know when the principals left because the school usually will start to operate poorly sometimes because we've worked with a principal and come up with solutions. And you know, there would be other things like, you know, potentially working with staggered drop-off times and pickup times. You know, when physically you're constrained, you know, there's no more options with physical curb lines or whatever to utilize. There's that. You know, so there are things that we've found to work, and you know, Escondido has 20-something elementary schools, and you know, just of the public schools, and so we've done a lot of you know, working with them. And so far, this actually has been one that we don't, you know, get complaints from.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? Has there been any questions regarding congestion?
Not directly, you know, with the school here.
How about the lights, with the frequency of the lights?
I mean, Bear Valley, we've gotten a lot of complaints, and part of that's just the amount of construction that's gone on in the last few years, SDG&E going down Bear Valley. We had Bear Valley coordinated in 2019, and we're looking when the construction completes north of Encino, the project that's going in there, of re-coordinating the signals. We lost coordination partially from the construction, and then we added left turns to Mary Lane, which was another school issue. And so we do plan to go back and coordinate that, and we'll look at the schools and make sure in the school periods they're getting more service.
That was one of the
Yeah.
one of the concerns of Mr. Bricks here, and I was just curious.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stevie, you had further questions?
No further questions. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I have a question, Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman. Just as a matter of, Alex, you said in the staff report in the background that it was Classical Academy moved into location in 2006 or 2000. You said 6, but did you mean 2005?
I did mean 2006, I apologize. That would have been a typo in the staff report.
Okay, so staff report. And then I have one other question with regard to the, this is just a detail thing. The cargo containers. How big are these cargo containers?
If I remember right, as far as the information I have here, 320 square feet.
Well, a normal cargo container is 8 by 20. That's 160 square feet.
And this one is 8 by 40.
8 by 40. That's 320. It's a big one.
Sir.
Vice Chair Barber?
Yeah, following in wrapping up the Brooks email, took me 3 tries to get your name right.
Close enough.
I still didn't have it right? Okay, no. Mr. Jones's email. He brings up the point, question, or suggestion that perhaps the timing of the lights could be changed to help the cycles move more efficiently. So I'm not certain how the lighting, how the timing system works, or whether or not that's a possibility. So could you address that?
Yeah, no, that's what I was speaking about a moment ago, about the synchronizing the corridor in Bear Valley. And part of that would be looking at the demand at different hours and different times of the side streets. You know, Bear Valley obviously has got to carry the most traffic, and so it's going to get, you know, the priority amount of the time in a signal cycle. But we can, in, you know, key time periods, give the side streets more time. And so that would all be part of that timing plan. We could put a, you know, while we're looking at the overall corridor to keep cars moving. That's the other thing, is when you synchronize, you get more cars through because they don't have to come to a stop and then go into motion, so.
Veronica, if the worst-case scenario does develop, and we do have a serious traffic congestion problem, and it does go to the council does open the door for modifications to the conditional use permit, what would the possible remedies be? I mean, would we be talking about scaling back the allowable student population?
So I think, and I will probably have Owen chime in a bit here too, is if that situation, that scenario played out, there would be further study through technical reports on traffic associated with the use, in your scenario, the approved use, right? And that would go through our traffic engineering division to take a look at what is the far more in-depth analysis of these impacts. That would need to be reviewed in order to make a determination on what type of solutions or actions need to be implemented, whether, I can't speak to what that would entail necessarily. I don't know, Owen, if you have any ideas.
Yeah, I mean, every location is different, and as you squeeze the bubble here, things pop out over here. I would just say, a lot of these, when we're working with schools, the biggest thing is educating parents and kind of making sure parents are doing all the same thing and the right thing. But if it's just purely physical, too many cars, not enough space, then I think we would start to talk about, staggered drop-off times. I understand I think they have some staggered pickup times right now.
I was going to ask is if the students' attendance at schools, if it's staggered, then wouldn't the drop-offs and pickups be staggered as well?
Yeah, I mean, most schools want to keep it all together, but there are cases where, by grade or by whatever, they can, shift times.
Thank you. Speaking of staggered schedules, Alex, if the student population is being staggered in their class schedules, with the 70 staff members will be there, are their schedules going to be staggered as well? Which, if it was, would open up parking space for parent visits at certain hours?
I believe that'd be a question best for the applicant on how their operations go.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Spear.
Back to the parking question, I'm just thinking that I know it was addressed that the parking was considered to be adequate for the staff load.
Yes, sir.
Of 70. And when it came to parents and drop off of students, that was not addressed as a parking issue, it was addressed as a drop off.
Yes.
What about the occasions where parents are not dropping off? How is that accommodated in this? How is that consideration given? I'm just thinking of, all of the times that parents will need or traditionally need to stop and park. If these 70 are taken up by staff alone, they would then be parking on the street. What is the plan for that?
I think it's probably the best question for the applicant again as well. As far as the city's development standards and review, we don't have additional determinations for that question, but certainly the applicant will be able to speak to that a little bit more.
For the city, a matter of asking the city then, what is the, I think Owen mentioned that there is room for emergency vehicles to get by when people park on the street in front of the school. At 30, where we're at right now, is that front of the school already filled?
No, our observation is that, once you're outside the drop-off and pick-up time periods, there's few, if any, cars parking along the curb line there. I think the neighbors could maybe verify that, but that's what we've seen. For one thing, the whole first curving portion past, kind of up past St. Mary's or St. Timothy's driveways and past the assisted living area house. project, is all red curbing along there, just so that, one, it's in a curve. You're needing room for cars to stack for left turns and right turns and come in. So you actually have red curbing until almost Gretna Green, and then the straightaway thereafter is available for curbside parking. So, yeah.
Do we have, speaking of curb parking and St. Timothy's and Aegis,
Yeah.
do we have comments and reach out to those entities regarding this project?
As part of the planning division and development services review is specific to the parcel itself. If they were requesting as part of this conditional use permit, we would be in concert with them as well, requesting their authorization. However, that was not part of the project at this time. It's specific to the parcel.
So I'll just also add to that as part of a public hearing item such as this one, we do notice property owners within 500 feet of the project site. Both of those parcels are within 500 feet, so the property owners of record would have received public notice of this item. And staff did meet with St. Timothy's independently to discuss the previously mentioned private agreement between the two private parties in an effort to memorialize that as part of the conditional use permit so that we could count the parking that was being privately held between St. Timothy's and the school in an effort to provide additional parking. But that was not something that both parties were willing to entertain, because when that occurs, the city becomes a party to it, and it becomes a memorialization associated with the use permit that we would not release unless the use complied with the reduction of that parking. So there was conversations with the church. They're aware of the project. We have not had any conversations with the care facility to the south.
But they were noticed.
Everyone
Yes.
was noticed, correct?
Commissioner McCarron, any questions? Commissioner Jester?
Is it anticipated that the entire 70-person staff will be on when there's all the time? Will be there?
Our request is only for the 70 staff capacity. Again, I believe that the applicant would best speak.
Okay, I just wonder if there's some kind of ratio between students, because I mean, it's only 105 extra students.
Right.
Staggered at different times that are gonna actually be on site, yet you're doubling more than doubling so there's not necessarily gonna be that many.
For the applicant, certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think staff, or I think the planning commissioners have really asked the questions that I would have. At this point, I would like to hear from the applicant if you've got a few words to say, and then the commissioners have questions for you.
Perfect, thank you all. Wasn't expecting this level of dialogue and discussion, but I'm Chief Operating Officer Mark Calpasian for Classical Academies. I'm also a parent in the classical program, so I'm dropping off every morning. And on top of that, I am a parishioner at St. Timothy Church across the street as part of their council. So I can speak on all of those issues. Maybe we start with the crosswalk. I can confirm that there are safety and security personnel in the morning and the afternoon for drop off. Relentless, that's a requirement on our end. I can confirm, yes, we do have a parking agreement with St. Timothy's for an additional about 60 spots. That is where the staff park predominantly. So we leave, you can go any morning and verify this, but the staff predominantly park at St. Timothy's, and then those spots are open for parents and for guests. And it was this technicality of them not wanting to record the parking agreement into perpetuity. But we have an agreement that is going into perpetuity, de facto. So I can speak on that. The question about are all employees there all the time? No, it's a very independent study program, and so with like the rise of special education services, you know, when these students are on campus, we bring in additional personnel, and then when they're not needed, they're not on campus. So it is a very fluctuating situation. They're not all there all the time. So, and then, so I think that was the parking, the hours of operation, St. Timothy's parking. Oh, and then just the, you know, one of the complicating factors for the traffic in that area, and we've worked with city and Bear Valley Middle School across the street, is because their parking is bad at Bear Valley Middle School, they try to come over to St. Timothy's and Classical Academies, drop off, and then walk across the street. And so that can really, when that happens, or at the beginning of the school year and new parents aren't really trained, that can cause some additional congestion. But we really, you know, we really work with them and try to really tamp that down. For the congestion that was mentioned at the beginning of the school year, that was an issue, but we worked with city personnel on the traffic light. It was stuck or behind, and so it was causing issues, but they were very responsive. They sent people out at least 2 or 3 times, and then now when I'm dropping off, it's much, much better. So the congestion at the beginning of the school year where the traffic lights has been fixed, and from our perspective, they're responsive and very accommodating. So, was there any questions I missed? Yeah.
Commissioner Justin.
Would that be your observation, Mr. Briggs?
No, it was not. So, well, you know, I concur with you at the beginning of the year.
Sure.
It's complete madness,
Yeah.
right? So
Point of
that-
order.
No.
Chair Weiler?
Wait,
Yeah.
Did you, hold on one second. Did you have to fill out a speaker card? Or if that's the traffic
Yes, I
engineer,
did.
we can call the traffic engineer to ask.
I filled that out.
I'm out of order.
Member of the bill.
Okay, let's go ahead and wait until that point. Any other questions, Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, so as a parent who does the drop off and as the COO, you feel like there is not a spillover on the canyon, which during pickup and drop off specifically, which causes flow of traffic issues for residents or for parents who are trying to get in and out relatively quickly?
Those are a lot of relative terms. So,
Right.
you know,
If you can give me your summary opinion, because I'm going to ask the same question of the resident.
I think from time to time, there are traffic congestion issues, all on Bear Valley Parkway, including that area. I think it is a pervasive issue in that area of Escondido that's not particular to the Classical Academy and St. Timothy area. So,
Right, I want to be super clear. I don't feel like it would be fair to hang the entire congestion issue on you, right? So to be fair, but we're talking about expanding what you've described as an issue, congestion issue. And so I want to know what we're doing to mitigate that.
yeah, and what I mentioned at the beginning of the school year where, you know, the principal did call me and say, we have issues, Mark, the light's not working properly. We were in immediate contact with the city, and they were, I mean, I'm not just saying this to, you know, look, they were responsive, they were on it, they sent people out, and the issue was resolved, you know, within, you know, a week or so. It took a couple visits, but it got dramatically better.
If it comes to a point where, you know, we do approve this as a commission and you build your beautiful new building, but then it turns out that there is impeded flow of traffic on Canyon, like significant impeded flow of traffic on Canyon, does Classical Academy envision a way that it can be resolved either by expanding the parking lot in some way so that there's more intake? And I assume there's a lineup that happens, right, prior to. I drive by 2 elementary schools at 2 o'clock to get to my house. And North Broadway is basically a giant parking lot. Right, now I recognize that's not your school, but I'm saying if that situation were to manifest, is there some sort of option that we could look at in the future?
Well, during COVID time, where students were not allowed to, you know, come on campus for graduation, we worked with St. Timothy's and created actually a drop-off line that went through their site onto Classical Academy.
And you have a strong obviously, you have a strong relationship. Okay. Can you opine at all in any additional detail as to why St. Timothy would not want to enter your agreement into the record?
Yeah, their attorney, basically, you know, everybody's got an attorney, and the attorney said that, you know, should in the future, you know, in 20 years, the church is packed and they want to change the agreement, they didn't want the inconvenience of having to, you know, contact the city.
Right.
And go through some official process. They just said, that's one less thing we want to deal with, and we don't really feel like doing it.
Right, right. But generally speaking, your hours of operation do not apply.
Correct, and I will tell you, as the parishioner, church attendance is dropping, not growing.
Yeah, that's a separate concern. But in general, you don't foresee a possible future where the church comes into dire need of that use of that parking lot, and you guys therefore lose what sounds to be a pretty important resource to your operational capacity from a traffic perspective.
No, they have significant parking there, and those parking lots are mainly used for Saturday evening and Sunday services.
Right.
And so during the week, Monday through Friday, there is an 8:30 mass there that takes place, but it has, you know, again, very few
Yeah, it's not going to
attendants.
impact you. And to the best of your ability, there's no line of sight on, like, say, the church exiting that premise and somebody else coming in?
No.
Okay, great.
No, it's paid for and we're not going anywhere.
Okay, that's good to know.
Commissioner Spear, did you have questions of the applicant? That may not have already been answered.
What do you think?
And that's okay, I've got a question and then we can
I
get back.
did, but I think you answered it. It was related to the teacher's parking off facility, and you did answer that question. I don't think I have any others.
Okay. Vice Chair Morrow?
He addressed all my concerns.
Yeah, the only question I've got is the staggered times when Classical Academy is operating, you know, when students are showing up and then departing, how that's staggered with Bear Valley across the street. Is everybody showing up at the same time with both schools, or are they staggered by 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
I don't recall off the top of my head what their Bear Valley Middle School's drop-off and pickup time are. They seem to be similar. I couldn't tell you exactly what theirs is.
As a follow-up, is the school getting complaints from the church or the neighbors that, look, it's a mess out here and something's got to be done with the students that are there now?
I'm not getting complaints. Like I said, we had complaints in that one first week of school when we needed to coordinate the lighting a little bit better.
Okay.
And then once that got resolved, people were not calling me anymore.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that from staff, is staff getting complaints about traffic issues out there other than the one that was mentioned by the applicant?
No, and it's funny, when you mentioned the students crossing, that would do it, because the minute you have PEDs crossing a road that wide, you've just stolen a third of the cycle.
Yeah.
Out of the signal. And so if that's happening cycle after cycle, that would take away your left turns pretty significantly. We have that same problem down at Pete Lane, because the rapid transit bus drops quite a few students up near Pete Lane, Las Palmas Pete Lane crossing. And so, for a short period there while those buses have dropped off, we'll pretty much lose a cycle or two. Same thing happens down in front of San Francisco High School, Mirror Lane. When the buses drop off southbound, all the students are crossing. And we work with that, and that'll be part of that timing plan. But when there are PEDs when their PEDs are being serviced, you lose 20, 30 seconds out of you.
And one final question, are you noticing during pickup drop-off, kids crossing, Canyon Road, from the other side? Or parents are dropping off, on the opposite side of the school, or dropping off in the church parking lot that the children are coming across the street?
That does happen occasionally, but usually parents are accompanying them to the crosswalk, and then our safety and security personnel.
Where's the crosswalk? Is it down at Bear Valley, or is there one?
Right in front of Gretna Green, the one that crosses from the school on Canyon is right where Gretna Green is.
Is it right there at Gretna?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
there is a crosswalk.
Yeah, we put it in, I think, last April, May.
Okay, and that's the one that's manned.
Yeah, yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that
But
concludes.
we often have a second safety and security personnel that is walking, you know, in that vicinity as well. So we usually have at least 2 out there.
Got it, I understand. I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Spear?
Just based on what was said, would you find it favorable for a condition to require what you mentioned you're already doing with the crosswalk?
Well, on a personal level, I don't ever favor additional bureaucratic red tape, but it's already happening, and it's a non-issue from my perspective. And it will safety and security is our priority, and so that will never change. You know, because it's too important. And I've been there for, I think, 13 years, kids been going there, and it's always been there.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to public testimony, but I would like to move one speaker all the way to the front, and that would be the traffic engineer, the gentleman off to the my far left. Did you fill out a speaker's slip?
I believe yes, sir, but I believe I don't.
How'd you know I'm a traffic engineer?
Oh.
Just kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were speaking and I thought that you were a part of this. Okay, then that's fine. We'll go ahead and move on to public testimony.
All right. Applicant has already spoken. We also have a comment, public speaker David Bird that would like to speak.
All right, so sorry for taking so much time. So
That's all right.
my
Go
intent
ahead.
here is not to stop a school from growing centers.
Go ahead and step right up here.
You know what?
And if you could state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name's David Bird. I live on Gretna Green, so I live almost directly across from the school. So I get to see it every morning, and I would suggest for any of those that think there's not congestion, just stop by in the morning and have a look, right? And it's not for lack of, like, your crossing guard there is fantastic. I mean, the guide, I think you had 2 different guides. They're fantastic. They do a great job, right? But my only point is, right, as I look at this school is, I don't think it was ever intended to be the size that we're trying to take this school to. And I'm not arguing that it can't be. What I'm saying is, I have some real concerns about the safety for everybody in that area, right? As you go into that area off of Bear Valley and up Canyon, what happens is you have parking on both sides of the road. And I know we spend a lot of time talking about parking, right? There is lots of parking. Everybody parks over at the church, and I think they're very amenable, and I don't think parking's really the issue. The issue is that there are no safeguards. There's parking on both sides of the street. Everybody parks on both sides. There's parking on both sides of Gretna. And if ever you had to get in there, you would not get in there, right? Because the traffic is at a standstill. And it's at a standstill because there's just no room to move. There's people, what's unique, I think, about this school, there's only one access point into it. You go in and you gotta come right back out the way you came in, right? What I'm saying is, maybe there's some traffic guards we can do. Like, maybe don't allow parking on both sides of the road. Maybe both the roads that are sort of the convenience points, right? The idea of people going into the church doesn't remove any of the traffic flow, because everybody that goes into the church has to come right back out onto Canyon. So they just congest it even more, so it doesn't help the traffic flow. It only helps for parking. So my point I want to raise here is I think there's already things we can do that we're not really addressing here. And so, to ease the flow. Because I think as long as you have room for safety vehicles to get in and out, great, right? There's not a problem. I don't know if we've considered even an access point. You go in through Canyon, go in off Canyon into the school and come out onto Bear Valley. I mean, we do it with other schools directly in and out onto Bear Valley, right? So there is room depending on what you do there. But I just think for now, right? You're talking about a 25% increase in head count. That's directly a 25% increase in traffic going through there. I don't see how it makes anything better if there's not a solution being provided to try and enable better flow through there now. So, you know, it's not that the school looks beautiful, and I think it looked better than it ever looked. I just think there should be some consideration in advance before we go charging ahead, building things on, because you're gonna have congestion there. There's no doubt about it. And the crosswalk situation there, I would say, I see it every day. I think it's pretty good. You know, the kids, there's a guard, he stops the traffic both ways. You know, I think the kids are pretty safe there, but I do think you can't get in and out of it. It's not a 1 minute, you're not gonna increase traffic by 25% and only get a 1 minute slowdown there. It's gonna be a grind. Anyways, I see it every day, and you know, I think the school tries to do a great job. I think the church is very open to people parking, doing a good job there. I just think, man, if we ever have a situation.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Your time is up for public comment.
Thanks.
Any other speakers?
No.
Oh, that was the only one. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, with that, we'll close the public testimony. We'll open this up to Planning Commission discussion.
One question to Owen, picking up on a suggestion that Mr. Byrd just made. Would banning parking on the other side of the street help alleviate any problems, or would you consider that overkill?
No, I will look at it again. I mean, it's just his testimony here is the same as a call we would get at any school, and so we'll take another look there. For removing maybe some additional parking. Beyond where it already is removed, if we see that that it's either a sight distance issue or just a pinch point that we think is going to affect emergency access. Just given the dimensions of the roadway, if people are legally parked, it shouldn't. You should have 20 feet down the middle. But it might be a case where people are, quote, kind of double parking. I mean, they haven't turned off their engine, but they're kind of sitting there idling. So, we'll take a look and see what's happening there. Because a lot of times it's not a question of more red curving. It's maybe more, talking to parents and in some of the worst cases, we've just had PD show up. They don't really even have to cite anybody. They just, when they're there, people, get the point, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spear.
A follow-up question to that for Owen. Is there any mechanism shy of a complaint that would suggest that, hey, within a short period, let's say this were approved and carried out, within a short period of time, some trigger that we could put in place where the city would follow up to see, we talked about some potential things we could notice, traffic maybe more congested than we expected, or parking to be a problem along the street, and some potential remedies. Is there some trigger where we could sort of check that after?
Yeah, I'll let Veronica take first stab at that.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon to, on certain in the conditional use permit realm, to require reporting of some kind. I've historically seen it done annually, but the commission could condition a 3-month report, a 6-month reporting of topical areas where staff would work with the applicant to get information on how the operation is occurring, and then we would bring it back to a planning commission meeting as a current business item to report out.
Commissioner Stevie.
So I don't have a question, but I would like to kind of.
Yeah, this is kind of discussion.
Yeah. So.
Oh, this is our discussion?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's more questions. I mean,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's our
I've got a
discussion.
question.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, no, I don't have a question.
I guess I feel
like not enough was done because of the screening process. Initially, with regard to, is it Bird?
Yeah.
Mr. Bird's concern, and I'm sure there's probably some other residents in the area that have similar concerns and difficulties. I think there's more work that needs to be done. I appreciate Commissioner Spears' suggestion maybe to condition somehow, or to add a condition to the conditional use permit about reporting in an effort to approve the project. I just don't feel like at this point I'm satisfied with regard to the congestion issues and traffic issues and challenges that it proposes. I've been by there and I know what's going on.
Even with fire, police, I mean, I do believe that when they do go through requirements, screening, and all of these departments check off, that is plenty. Plus, asking for a report, 3-6 months out, as, we can do, really is a lot of research, a lot of, stringent looking at projects that are coming before the planning department. I can't imagine that any more is absolutely necessary at this point.
Well, generally speaking, when fire looks at it, they're not looking at traffic.
Right, they're looking at safety, which
They're
is a
looking
key
at safety,
issue.
and they're not looking at whether they can get in and they can get out. They devote very little time to stuff like that.
Well, and my concern really directly arises from my daily experience of driving North Broadway past North Broadway Elementary and Reedy Creek, both of which have gotten approved by city staff for traffic flow. And I can tell you I am narrowly navigating parked cars on the one side and functionally parked cars taking up one of the 2 lanes on the left side, kids walking all over. I mean, I'm going through there at 5-10 miles an hour, which I should. And I promise you, I always drive within the speed limit. But in all seriousness, there are kids that, they jut out, right? Because they're kids, and they're young, and they're running all over the place, and they're excited after. And so I'm always nervous about it, because it's happened to me a couple times, right? And I think, how did this occur? And so I respect that the applicant has gone through our process, and I respect that everyone here has upheld the standards. I do have concerns about the standards. But that being said, I also feel like we have to, as a planning commission, we have a balancing test. On the one hand, it's what's in the best interest of, especially with respect to the safety of our youngest rising generation. And on the other hand, what have we mandated per the city code, right? Like, it's not this body's responsibility to just unilaterally change city. We can't even do it even if we wanted to. And it's not our role to do it. So I would suggest that we approve this on 2 conditions. The first being that we do attach to the conditional use permit a mandate that so long as there's an agreement between, and however the legal language needs to say this, the spirit is, as long as there's a nexus, a relationship between the school and the church's parking facility is used, and there are kids crossing, we do mandate that during those peak periods that there is someone manning it. And the reason why I think that's fair is because the school seems like, you guys seem tremendous, and you guys have a relationship. But conditional use permits live forever. They're the only thing that doesn't die besides bureaucracy. So, I mean, this to the point, this permit was originated in the 70s with a preschool at a house. So who's to say who's going to have this permit in the future? And who's to say if they're going to have that relationship with the church and all that? So I think we need to, as long as there is that relationship and kids using that crosswalk, we need to make sure that there's safety. And the second is, I think it's fair to come back in 3 or 6 months and just do an analysis. Can emergency vehicles safely flow during pickup and drop off? Or is there a traffic impedance due to a combination of parked cars and also parents waiting to get in and out of the single point of access into the school?
Would that be after the completion of the project?
After, correct.
May I interject on 2 points just for staff's clarification?
Yeah.
The first is that regarding,
I just want to, there has not been a motion
Oh,
made yet, so it's
okay.
just discussion at this
Sorry.
point. We might want to wait for
We'll
clarification
wait.
until a motion's
We'll
been
wait.
made. Let them discuss it.
yes, sorry.
Anyone else want to? So in hearing my fellow planning commissioners, especially what Commissioner Stevie brought up, here's the thing about a conditional use permit. It can come back and be modified. So if there's an actual real life problem that's occurring, then it can be brought back before this body and modifications can be made at that point. Modification to the point of, look, 500 students, way too many. It's causing way too many problems. The congestion is bad. The fire department's now been, trying to get through, or police services, and they're not able to do it during pickup and drop off.
Right.
Well,
Do you reduce the number of students? Because here's what's happening right now. The congestion, it may not be comfortable. It's not comfortable at any school throughout, this region, because I travel around and I go through by these schools at specific times, so I miss it when I'm trying to get from point A to point B. And as the applicant has said, and I've seen it with my daughter when she was in elementary school and junior high, the staff at the school is meeting with the parents and telling them, look, you have to abide by what we're trying to accomplish here in picking up and dropping off our students. Because if you don't, it's going to cause a problem not only with the parents, but it's going to cause a safety issue for your kids. I've heard this over and over almost every year, when my daughter was in elementary school. So the point being is, there are mechanisms in place that if there happens to be a real life problem, then we bring the applicant back to the city. We can look at modifying the CUP with staff, bring it back to this body to make whatever adjustments are necessary. I would kind of rather see that than instituting a condition that the school and the church have to come to some binding agreement. When right now, there's a handshake agreement. If that handshake agreement changes and it starts causing problems, then definitely it's got to come back to staff for resolution, back to this body for approval of a change to the CUP. I'd much rather see that, and it's just my opinion, that's why we have the discussion, than putting on additional conditions that are beyond the safety measures that the school is putting in place to make sure these children are safe. First, Commissioner.
well, you know what, I would argue that yes, that's the way it should work. However, isn't agenda item number 3 where it's landed in our lap because it was the city council that wanted to make changes to a conditional use permit?
We'll get to that discussion on 3 because there's a lot more to that story, I believe.
Okay, well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it seems like what you're saying is they can come back here to make the modifications, but that's not what happens. It goes to the city council and they force the modifications.
That's not relevant to item 3 at all.
What we're talking about, however.
I'm not talking about item 3. I'm talking about what he's talking about, it coming back to us.
Well, if I was to summarize the perspective, are you saying that you're saying that it's not quite so clean as it coming right back to us? Like if there is a problem,
Exactly.
it has to go through city council.
Exactly.
But if we put
Not
a mechanism
necessarily.
in, like we talked about, where it's reviewed and that can potentially be reported back, would that, Veronica, be something that we would potentially review?
If the condition that is applied by the commission as part of their motion dictates that a report be generated and brought back to the commission, we would abide by the condition that was set by the commission.
So we can put that in the mechanism, so that we can review the progress 6 months or whenever afterwards.
That was going to be my question. Would you support having that condition for staff to come back in 3 or 6 months? but with a study on the traffic conditions.
There's a condition number 5 that annual enrollment figures have to be provided to the city. So at least we can kind of track, or the city can, and what the enrollment numbers are. And so as the enrollment numbers, I think, ramp up, we might be able to see that there may or may not be an issue with traffic. I don't know if it needs to be an automatic, yes, you're gonna come back and do, report to us what the issues or non-issues are out at the school.
And I'm trying to understand your objection to the crosswalk safety condition. Is it just that you feel like it's extraneous?
What were you thinking on the crosswalk?
Oh, just that so long as the school is utilizing the church's parking lot, therefore children are crossing, parents are crossing the crosswalk, especially during pickup and drop off where that flow of people can actually impede the flow of traffic, that we just make it a condition that there are safety and security, basically what they're already doing, but we attach it to the permit because someday in the future, they may not be the ones managing that school, right? Maybe it turns over again, because it was a preschool, it was Montessori, now it's classical. Could be some other school someday. And they might not, they may not have the same safety standards. So attaching it to the permit just gives us that level of security.
No, I understand what you're saying there.
Without formalizing their agreement with the church.
Yeah, we don't need to see that.
Right. Well, wait a minute, who's the agreement with? I mean, is this in the...
We're agnostic on the agreement. It's just, are they utilizing it? Whether or not there's an agreement is, we're agnostic on that. But are they utilizing that parking? Is it basically a functional part of the school's sort of use?
We don't even have to mention that. We can simply put a condition that they provide crosswalk managed. We don't even have to mention the reason.
No, I don't have a problem with, a condition that says, basically somebody will man that crosswalk during pickup and drop off times, because the school wants to have these children safe.
The present tenant wants that.
Exactly. Now it follows the permit, not classical what's happening.
Right, yeah,
Right.
and that's my concern.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to clarify. So I want to understand the height of the bar or the requirement for reporting an issue. So if traffic flow is impeded and local residents complain, my understanding is the remedy is they complain to city staff, it reaches some sort of frequency level that you guys take notice, go through a resolution process directly with the school. If the resolution process is unsuccessful, at that point, you have to internally initiate a review of the conditional use permit, and that would go to city council. Or someone goes to whoever the city councilman is. Who is the city councilman in that district? Is that Judy?
Judy.
So Judy, and they complain at her sufficiently that she goes to the mayor, who agendizes the item to review the conditional use permit. Those are the two paths for review. There is no other path.
There is.
There is. What is it?
You said that the trigger is initiated by complaints. It doesn't have to be initiated by complaints. It could be a written period of time, written into condition, where the city looks at, I think that's what we discussed originally, the city would look at without a complaint necessarily as the trigger, would look at the condition. Is that correct, or would that be onerous on the city?
So I want to be clear that what I spoke about earlier was a reporting out of information. So providing informational data points to the commission about the school's operation after a specific period of time. What I spoke about is not after 6 months the CUP comes back for re-review. So if staff's recommendation or staff's opinion on a reporting out is not a reevaluation of the CUP to determine whether it should be modified or revoked in that action. It is to provide an update of what has transpired since operations have changed for the approved project, so that the commission can be informed on what the actual on-the-ground information is at that point in time.
And can I follow up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and if it is a negative report from you, then the commission can then what? Like agendize that item and then talk about it internally, and we may at that point decide to elevate to the attention of city council that a review on this permit may be necessary. Is that kind of the full life
That
cycle?
report's not coming from you, is it? It's coming from them, the applicant.
So it's going to depend on how the commission phrases the condition, which was one of my, going to be one of my interjection points earlier. So I would just caution or just suggest that when the commission opts to add a condition that is not recommended by staff, meaning it's not in the draft conditions of approval, the higher level of specificity you give us is helpful, because we have to take what your motion is as the condition. So we would ask for that level of specificity. What is it you're looking to have reported on? Who's preparing that report? What are the metrics you want to know about, et cetera?
Yeah, what is your feeling on the reporting as a condition to the condition use permit? I mean, shouldn't that be something they provide as a requirement of the conditional use permit to the commission on a ongoing basis, at least, after the project is over?
Well, I'm.
That way the staff doesn't have to deal with it. They just get the report, they forward it to us, we take a review of it. And then
What is it we want to know? We want to know whether there is a significant traffic impact, negative traffic impact. How would we find, what's a convenient way, without putting a burden on staff necessarily, to find that out? I would, I guess, pose that question maybe to Owen. Is there a simple metric that would help us determine that without devoting a bunch of staff resource to it?
No.
that's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, my feeling is that as nice as this report element might be, at the end of the day, this commission wouldn't really have anything actionable that we could do with it.
Unless there was an easy
Agreed.
metric that was reported back to us.
Even if there was, by the time it comes to us, like, it takes city council to.
It would take city council.
I don't think so. I think what Veronica mentioned is if we put specificity into the trigger mechanism,
Right.
reporting mechanism, it would be reported back to us accordingly.
No, right, but then let's assume we get the report, what do we do with it?
We could alter the conditions of our CUP.
No, let me just clarify, that's actually not
Okay.
correct. So it wouldn't, as Veronica was saying, it wouldn't open up the CUP for you to modify it.
That has to be done by
That's
staff
correct.
or by the city
Correct,
council?
that's correct.
I think
Whoa,
Article
whoa, whoa, whoa,
61.
hold on. You had a question,
I just want to make a statement.
Commissioner Stevens?
No. So all I'm saying is, if we were to, no matter how we word it at the end of the day, it feels like we kind of don't actually lose. We just get noticed, but it's going to take to me, unfortunately, it's a moot kind of point. I think that adding it just adds bureaucratic complexity and potentially on the applicant. City staff gets, their resources drained. If there is a problem at the end of the day, should we approve this? It feels like the mechanism to resolve any problem is going to be through the city council, because they're the ones who.
If I could just clarify, because
Yeah.
yes, I believe that's correct, but I do want to just point out that you had mentioned one avenue before, which I believe is also correct, which is in the future, any planning commissioner could agendize the item for discussion, have a discussion, the commission could, out of that discussion, move to recommend to city council to open up the CUP, but it does have to be city council eventually doing. That makes sense.
Commissioner Jester, you had
Well,
a comment or question?
I'm just going off of memory, but I don't think that under Article 61, the Planning Commission has any power to revoke or even modify a conditional use permit. Even though it says we can, I don't think we can without some type of legal process.
Am I wrong in saying that once that item is brought to the planning commission, we do have that authority?
Just give me 1 second, okay?
Yeah,
do you want to?
My understanding that that's the case. Item 3 tonight, it's something different, but, yeah, the committee, if we're the approving body, it comes back to this body. That's my understanding. If that's not how the code is written, that there is something,
That's
that
precisely.
it's got to go to city council before it comes here.
No, that's precisely how it is
That's
written.
how it's written.
But has to be a function of law to be able to do that. And I think that would involve some work on the city attorney's part.
So if it gets to that point, that there's a modification that's absolutely necessary,
Right.
a lot of staff is going to be involved. Because nobody really wants to bring a CUP back for modification because there's issues. They want to resolve these issues through code enforcement, through other modifications that they can do within the confines of the CUP to resolve the issue. That's kind of the reality. Having it go to planning commission before it comes back here, if that's the task, or come back here, geez, that's a long process. There's a lot that can probably be done to resolve issues. If it can't be done, then absolutely it's got to come back here and with a recommendation
Yeah,
from
and
staff
that's-
on how to correct the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why the idea of the reporting as a condition of this use permit provides for a mechanism for that.
Yeah, I don't know, the reporting just feels kind of too close to me. Like, I just, Commissioner Weiler, if I understand
We could
your-
agendize it, as Dare said,
I agree.
and bring it up in the meeting and then review it.
So it feels a little too in the weeds for me. I think if there's going to be a problem with the future of the school and any congestion issues, we're going to know about it. I personally don't want to know about it unless there is a problem. So I feel like it just places a burden on staff to put in that reporting mechanism. I feel like there are plenty already in place for that. So I would say we can leave that to decide.
Yeah, so I guess my proposal were, just to make it clear where I'm at this point, I am in favor of approving it with the amendment that we have some sort of language around the traffic guards. Because not only do they attend to the safety of the kids and the parents, which we care a lot about, and not only I want this to live with the permit, right? Not with the applicant, who I think we all agree is very responsible. I want it to live with the permit. Also, that might be a mechanism for that might be a recourse for controlling the traffic flow, right? If we can maybe, the city staff, if there is a problem, can say, hey, can you have your crossing guards just make sure kids aren't crossing during the left turn, for example, things like that. And then that way it doesn't have to come to us and it's not some huge burden or anything. It's like a simple, because to your point, if something as simple as kids crossing the street goes off wrong, you lose a third of your signal or something like that. So I think that gives us a mechanism, and for me, that would resolve the concern.
Are you going to form that in a motion?
Is that a motion?
I would say that.
It's not a motion. Then I would make a motion to table this till another time. Can I do that?
You can make.
You can make the motion.
You can make any motion.
I'm just gonna make a motion to table it.
Well, what would you want to
Still
table it
need to
for?
get a second.
Because I think we need more discussion. I don't think I think there's too much
I
going
would say
on here.
this, the more discussion, I don't know that more discussion would bring us any more information. And I don't think we can justify doing further study based on what our constraints. So I'm not sure what that would accomplish.
We do have a motion to table this. Do we have a second? Okay, there's no second, so the motion fails. Do we have another motion that we would like to present?
I would like to present a motion that we approve this as brought to us, but with the provision, with the amendment. Dare I need your help? But
With the additional condition.
with the additional condition that we require that there be crossing guards manning the crosswalk provided by the school during the key hours of pickup and drop off.
Is that on your motion?
That would be my
Do
motion.
we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Stevie, a second by Commissioner Macaro. Any more discussion?
Can I just real quickly, I want to confirm that, is that sufficient direction for city staff?
You noted guards.
See, this is why I asked this.
Which is great, yeah.
What is the language that I need to suggest something along the lines of crossing guards without, I don't want to imply that they're
Numeric.
paid or
Just
that they're.
numeric. Just number. Just the number would be helpful. So does that denote 2?
2, 1 on each side. Is there
Can we
any
still-
other?
Did you have to second the motion again?
I'll
I
second.
want to get an agreement on that one, yeah.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we got a first and a second. If we can have the vote?
Vice Chair Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Macaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Spear,
Yes.
Chair Weiler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jester,
No.
Commissioner Stevie.
Yes.
All right. And the vote is 5 and 1 to approve.
Okay, all right, thank you. That concludes this item. We will take a 5-minute break. So these are not speakers, just
Thank you, Alex.
Oh, I know. I realized that. I did 5 minutes before I left the house. That's why. You spoke. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I didn't go.
There is one
I know you'll be, but trust me, I'm not that kind of guy. Oh, I never do.
We just wanted to make sure we had the possibility.
Hey, sorry, I didn't. No, really, no. Like, the man of. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Lots of notes. I know, I saw. I was like,
I have many. Yes, sir. Right outside the door right there. I've been in the military far too long to not tell you straight. What branch? Marines. Kiata. I'm going to go for Kiata. Darth Vader.
Then we have red up to not quite.
Not the first one, you brought it back again.
Right.
You wanted for that
I did not like that.
I'll find out.
We'll find out.
I'll find out.
You'll get back. I'll wait for this one. How's it going?
That's probably
that's something we're all twice a
I know, I just.
for about a year and a half. Yeah.
I'm about 100 miles out. But I should have gotten it. I figured out my external
I don't know.
Definitely.
Make sure that we get
Your email did change. We got that
And that's where we really rely on to make those comments. So we don't have to pay.
No, hey, I appreciate you listening. You know, I know it's
Okay, that's what I have to.
We had practice at the site house. I got this, I don't think I can really be a part of it, volunteer for school. Kids have all my kids go to school. And I was
You're not even out here.
Last one I got from school, high school.
Yeah, if Steve just replied to all, and then it went to you, that's weird. Is it something in your email?
well, the hardest
Yeah, the higher ups.
Is that what you need?
Do you have like an administrator for your email? Sometimes all your admins, like whoever's administrating the information system, and like give them our email domain, and they like,
That's a good idea.
and they'll clear like, don't even present.
Yeah, because it might be blocking it from our.
There was a time where.
Wait till we try to get it. They're right on.
There was a time that you
If we could, we're gonna.
I'll confirm on our internal roster after the
Anyway, it's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, that has implications for school operations. In some schools, there's just
Okay, if we could have everybody take their seats.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and begin the public hearing on PL 24-0335. It's Interfaith Community Service modification to the CUP. Any disclosures? All right, seeing none. Go ahead with the staff report.
Thank you again, Chair, and good evening again, Commissioners. Again, my name is Alex Rangel, Assistant Planner for our City of Escondido's Planning Division, and now I am presenting to you item 3 on your agendas. It is PL 240335, a conditional use permit modification, requesting modification of an existing social service operation at 550 West Washington. To introduce the item to you, we are requesting that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2025-03, which will be recommending approval to the City Council with the following changes and corrections throughout your staff report and the conditions of approval. The following items were identified as typographical errors in our preparation of the project, and they are on your slides to present this information to you. On page 121 of your staff report within the condition of approval, the 2 typos are present within there. Draft conditions of approval. Number 1, the withdrawal management services capacity is listed on that page as 49 clients, and that will need to be amended to 59 as part of this project. Additionally, there is an error at the bottom of that page in staff reports between the details of request and the condition of approval. The morning meal services reflected in the details of request are correct. However, the conditions will need to be amended to match to provide these services every day from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. To introduce the property background, this is a 1.29 acre, 3-parcel site. It is bounded by Quill Street to the west and Washington Avenue to the south of the property. Subject property, addressed as 550 West Washington Avenue, is located in the heart of the city under the general plan land use designation of light industrial, under the light industrial zoning designation, which permits for lighter industrial and office type uses typically, which is more restrictive than that of the general industrial zoning. Surrounding this property uses include the Escondido World Market to the west, fleet storage and other warehouse uses to the south, a hotel to the east, which is currently entitled for single-room occupancy units, and a multifamily residential development to the north. The original construction for this property occurred in 1979, which the city approving the construction of a 21,600 square foot industrial building consisting of different industrial uses such as general retail, trades manufacturing, and automotive services provided at this location. Provide a site background for Interfaith Community Services. And as a point of order, I will be bringing up Interfaith Community Services, Interfaith, and the applicant interchangeably throughout this presentation. In 2000, Interfaith Community Services initiated a zoning code amendment and a conditional use permit to permit social services within the light industrial zone to occupy a central portion of the existing industrial facility. This request permitted social services uses within the light industrial zone, subject to a conditional use permit, as well as locational requirements that may be adjacent to this general commercial zone and within 500 feet of public transportation. The original conditional use permit permitted the use of social services, administrative services, food storage, distribution, and a 10-bed veteran shelter. This request also included a parking reduction in this site. Over the next 19 years, Interfaith's operations continued throughout and expanded through multiple conditional use permit modifications to encompass the entire facility. These requests are more thoroughly detailed and outlined within the project background section of your provided staff reports. In the summer of 2024, as a result of some operational issues identified by the city's Development Services and Escondido Police Department's Community-Oriented Policing and Problem-Solving Unit, or COPS unit for short, city staff were tasked with a substantive review, consolidation, and clarification of Interfaith's conditional use permits over the years. This effort was pursued to address the past 5 conditional use permits associated with each modification and consolidate them into one master set of conditions of approval, providing additional clarity and specificity to the applicant and to city staff. This also served to update and add conditions to seek and abate the Escondido Police Department's issues and identified by the COPS unit's investigations. This effort was collaborative between Interfaith Community Services, Escondido Police Department, our Development Services Department, and the Homelessness Subcommittee of City Council over the course of the later half of 2024. The revised modifications were brought to City Council on January 15, 2025, and approved with modifications under City Council Resolution 2025-02R. As a result, this modification is now the governing document for the project site. As of this report, The current operations have been supplemented to include a traditional housing facility, an emergency shelter location, addiction treatment services, walk-up services, and medical services on-site for clients. Full services are provided in your staff reports under the details of the request. For the purposes of this application and this presentation, the Interfaith currently operates the following residential components. First, a 44-bed transitional housing facility. Second, a 10-bed veteran withdrawal management and veterans bed space which flexes between the two uses, and a 49-bed emergency shelter operation, for a total capacity of 103 beds on site. The number of clients has been in effect at the project site since the 2015 modification. You can see the current breakdown for the services provided in attachment 3 of your staff reports under the site plan and on the following slide. The project before you this evening is part of Interfaith's collaborative efforts with the San Diego County Health and Human Services and Behavioral Health Services Department. Interfaith is currently providing a full continuum drug medical treatment program of withdrawal management, residential and outpatient services at the facility, currently operating under the 10-bed veterans shelter and withdrawal management flex space originally permitted in 2018. These services operate with a contract from the county, providing services under the American Society of Addiction Medicine use levels, providing care for adults 18 years and above. In July of 2024, Interfaith was awarded an expansion of this contract from San Diego County to provide additional withdrawal management beds. This contract is scheduled to go into effect on February 24, 2025, to allow for Interfaith to provide services for a total of 32 withdrawal management services on site. Interfaith has submitted for a conditional use permit modification for the existing social services on site to provide for this expansion of their contract and to allow for further expansion use. To facilitate this, Interfaith is proposing to eliminate the emergency shelter bed location on site originally permitted in 2015 and change these beds to additional withdrawal management services. This modification would allow for a maximum of 59 beds for withdrawal management services within the facility, proposing no change in the total capacity on site of 103 beds. This expansion will operate in the area identified in the upper portion of the site plan you see here, with residents occupying a 2,200 square foot dormitory space, which includes intake and staff offices, medications offices, bathrooms, and storage for clients. Clients of the withdrawal management services would also have access to the additional amenities and services provided within the facility, such as dining, kitchen, recreational rooms, and laundry facilities. Intake and admission for withdrawal management services occurs within the first 48 hours of admission typically. Treatment beds are filled on a first-come, first-served basis. Interfaith does not maintain wait lists for clients, but is able to provide for resources for other programs if they are unable to provide care on site. Within the facility, withdrawal management clients are assisted through the process of acute intoxication and non-threatening withdrawal systems to a stable and fully supported substance-free state. Clients are provided assistance through substance use disorder counselors, licensed physicians, and medical staff to ensure that the appropriate treatment is provided to said clients. Typical length of stay for these withdrawal management services requested is 10 to 14 days based on the determination of medical staff on site. The full description of the associated policies that Interfaith follows for this use are included in your staff report under attachment 5. As part of the project review, the Staff Development Committee reviewed the project against the city's general plan, zoning code, and our development standards. The project is consistent with multiple components of the city's general plan to include the city's housing element and the community health and services element, providing a range of housing opportunities and health care to target populations. The project is in conformance with the city's zoning code and the pertinent development standards, meeting the criteria required for social services within these industrial zones, and the process and requirements for Article 61, Division 1 for conditional use permit modifications. Additionally, as the project will not be changing the amount of clients or the residential capacity on site, no further review is required for physical development standards for the property. The police department participated and collaborated heavily with the city-initiated modification approved in January 15, 2025 council meeting, and has independently reviewed the proposed changes under this modification. The police department's concerns have been addressed in the matter of both projects, and they are satisfied that all city services have been addressed, and this requires no further review from the police department. The project was also part of the city's discussions with the applicant within the homelessness subcommittee of the city council. As part of the city-initiated proceedings surrounding this conditional use permit and that which was brought to the city council on January 15th, the homelessness subcommittee, comprised of 2 city council members, has directed staff to return this applicant-initiated modification to city council for their final decision. The project qualifies under the California Environmental Quality Act Exemption Guidelines Section 15301 for existing facilities. The project is proposing a change of use, which does not expand the current capacity of residential beds on site, nor does it significantly expand the services which are provided. The CEQA notice of exemption is provided to you as attachment 7 of your staff. Prior to tonight's hearing, the applicant provided staff with over 200 letters of support from their community members. Due to the time prior to this meeting, we were able to provide them for you in print. However, there is one printed copy at our Minister Clerk's desk, Ms. Melissa DeMarzo, and they have been emailed to you independently for your review as well. In conclusion, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2025-03, recommending approval of the project to City Council with, again, the following 2 revisions to your draft conditions of approval due to minor typographical errors. As we discussed earlier in the presentation, on page 125 of the staff reports for draft conditions of approval, withdrawal management services will need to be amended to 59 clients per night. And additionally, the morning meal services need to be congruent with the details of request to be provided these services every day from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And this concludes staff's presentation. And the applicant and Interfaith Community Services have requested 15 minutes to present their project to the commission and a presentation themselves. And staff will be present for any questions after this. Let me load up your app.
Let's go ahead, if we could, real quick. I would like the applicant to go ahead and give their presentation, and then we'll go to questions of staff and then questions of the applicant. Some of our questions might get answered with the applicant's presentation.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Greg Angel. I have the honor of serving as the CEO at Interfaith Community Services. I've been in that role over a decade. I began with Interfaith about 19 years ago. I live here with my family in Escondido as well. Alex provided an excellent presentation of the collaboration that Interfaith and the city have engaged in over this past year. And I'll share just a few highlights about the organization and the changes that we're requesting your approval of tonight. And then I'm available for any questions. Interfaith was founded here in Escondido 46 years ago. We were created by diverse faith communities who pooled resources to do a better job together than any of them could alone in helping people overcome poverty, hunger, homelessness, and addiction issues. Last year, we served more than 20,000 unique individuals. And we're very proud that we helped more than 1,000 individuals overcome homelessness, and just as important, prevented another almost 1,500 individuals from becoming homeless in Escondido and throughout North County. Our 550 West Washington location in question tonight has held a conditional use permit for more than 23 years. We were issued the first ever notice of violation at that site last year, and that began a process of working directly with city staff, with police, and with elected leaders, including the homelessness subcommittee, to address those concerns. We took those concerns very seriously, and we were very pleased to secure unanimous approval from council 2 weeks ago on a modification to that permit. The changes of those operations have already been implemented and are working very well. Tonight we're here to share about and ask for your support of an expansion of a critically needed resource when we think about homelessness and addiction facing our community. Interfaith has secured an investment of $14 million from outside of Escondido to help here in Escondido. We've secured a $12 million contract from the County of San Diego and a $2 million contract from the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. This will expand our 14-day residential withdrawal management services program. It'll provide the clients who are receiving that service with not just drug and alcohol treatment, but mental health services, connection to longer-term treatment, and then housing and employment services. The $2 million acronym up there, SAMHSA grant, funds an Escondido homeless addiction-focused outreach team. that reaches and connects with individuals throughout our community on a daily basis to connect and get them into treatment. We've operated our 14-day withdrawal management services program at our location at 552 West Washington for more than 5 years now, since 2019. We also operate longer-term residential treatment programs at that location. And we've provided these programs at different locations in the city of Escondido, going all the way back to the 1990s, always in partnership with the city. And in fact, we took over an earlier iteration of this program after the city had been operating it themselves and found it more cost-effective to partner with Interfaith to provide those services. The program in question tonight, the expansion of our withdrawal management services beds, 70% of the individuals who come into that program successfully completed and are linked to longer-term treatment programs. Those individuals who are not successful, most of those individuals are from here in Escondido. It's the same number, 70% of our withdrawal management services clients are from Escondido, directly coming off the streets of Escondido into our program. In the small instance where those individuals are not successful, and they are, in the small instance, not from this community, we provide them transportation assistance to return them to their community of origin. One of the concerns we've understood is that a program like this could bring somebody here who is unsuccessful and then is here in our community. In our experience, that simply does not occur. We've been able to work effectively with not just city staff to address that concern, but also police, who are the individuals, boots on the ground, ensuring that those challenges don't happen. People are almost always successful, and when they're not, if they're not from here, they go back to where they came from. We're very proud of our partnership with Neighborhood Healthcare. We have a co-located health center, so individuals receive a medical clearance and come into our program and are connected with primary care. This also reduces barriers to admission and gets people in quicker. As one example of the effective work that's already happening today, our SAMHSA addiction-focused homeless outreach team, over just a 3-month period, recently moved 45 individuals off of our streets here in Escondido into our withdrawal management services program. We would have been able to move more, but the program operates at capacity. It's full, which is why we're seeking expansion. Of those 45 individuals, all but 2 are still in treatment or have already successfully completed long-term treatment programs. It's a remarkable rate of success, 43 out of 45. As I mentioned, though, our current withdrawal management services, which is the front door to long-term treatment and rehabilitation, it's full. And so we are urgently seeking support to allow us to implement county funds from outside this community to address the needs of Escondido unsheltered individuals who are suffering from addiction and mental health issues and are interested in seeking treatment, want to get into a program, and today they often just don't have a bed available for them. So we're seeking one change in the conditional use permit. That's to modify our conditioned 49 emergency shelter beds, which are currently conditioned for only 12 hours of operation, to modify that to be 49 withdrawal management services beds that will operate 24/7. This proposal aligns with the city's policy on homelessness to address substance abuse and addiction. Through our SAMHSA-funded Escondido addiction-focused outreach team, we're targeting Escondido residents for this program. It enhances the current successful model. As I mentioned, far too often, our teams engage with somebody in our downtown business association district, in a local encampment, or on our streets who wants to get into our program, but there is no bed available for them. This changes that dynamic. It leverages and secures outside investment of resources to address one of the most pressing issues facing our community. And it replaces the emergency shelter beds, which have been suspended and non-operational since September of 2023 due to lack of funding. This is a program and an intervention that's badly needed and is fully funded outside of City of Escondido resources. We are immensely grateful and thankful for the support of our community. I appreciate Alex and the team printing up the letters. I have another copy of our nearly 300 letters of support. And I want to also thank our supporters who are here tonight maybe a little hand wave with blue, and just appreciate you all taking the time to share your support and to be with us this evening. With that, I'll leave these letters with clerk for your review, and will be available for questions and discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and start questions. We'll do questions either of staff or the applicant. It's kind of you guys' choice. Vice Chair Barber.
I'll start with staff. I just want to make sure there's something's very clear. That staff brought up several times in the presentation the July 15th modifications to the interfaith conditional use permit. Just want to make it clear that, and if you could please clarify, that the modifications and the actions of that conditional use permit that was heard by the council and voted on by the council on the 15th is completely separate and has nothing to do with this current application. And that was one that was initiated by the city. This is independently initiated by Interfaith Crisis Center. The two don't overlap, and one does not have anything to do with the other.
Correct. The projects do not overlap. As I discussed earlier in the staff report, as the city-initiated CUP modification is now the governing document, technically this application is a modification of that, as they are changing the services and the conditions of approval are consistent from that application to now.
Very good. You actually already answered all my questions. So thank you very much.
Other questions, Commissioner Jester?
I have a question, sir. What is the a drug that you're seeing that most of your majority of people that come in that they're using that they need to get off of and withdraw from?
Fentanyl.
Fentanyl. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I suspected, but that's pretty dangerous stuff. Well, it's a wonderful work that you're doing, and thank you very much for all you're doing for the community of Escondido.
Questions? Commissioner Spear, and then Carl.
How many days does a person need to be in Escondido to be considered from Escondido?
So when I say people, the individuals are from Escondido, they are physically here on our streets, or they had a residence here when they come into our program. For the entrance into this program, we don't have data on how long they've been, if they are homeless, on the streets of Escondido. We do have other data, though, that our homeless outreach teams collect with individuals they engage and work with in an ongoing capacity. And that data shows that 80% of individuals are either from Escondido, born and raised here, or they have family here in Escondido, and that's why they're here. So we have data on that set, which there's a lot of overlap between that group and group coming in. But when we talk about the 70% in this program being from Escondido, their residence is here or they're physically here.
So they could have come here 2 days ago and they would be considered from Escondido.
Correct. We identify where they are currently sleeping.
How many how many facilities are there in San Diego County and that provide services similar to what you're proposing?
There are a number of sites similar to what we provide. We're part of a network of providers who provide drug Medi-Cal funded substance use disorder services. There are other providers in the city of Escondido and other providers in North County cities as well as other parts of San Diego.
The closest provider outside of Escondido that provides the detox services like this is how far away?
There are other providers of detox services in Escondido.
I mean, outside of Escondido.
Outside of Escondido? I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you.
In terms of the numbers that we're talking about here, which would be a total of 59 beds, are any of those adjacent city providers at that number, or are they far below it in terms of the number of beds that they're operating?
In downtown San Diego, Father Joe's Villages is in the process of opening a significantly larger detox program. I'm not sure the exact number, but that will, I believe, be will be the largest provider of those services. There are also a number of other providers who are in similar stages as we are here, working with local planning commissions and working through land use and entitlements on projects. There's another provider that is also opening or seeking to open a 50-bed similar service. They call it a sobering program in San Diego as well.
If San Diego is number one, would this 59-bed put us at number 2 in San Diego County?
I'm not sure.
Somewhere in the top, I would imagine.
Though to be clear, we're only seeking to operate 32 of those beds through the current funding that we have. We're not seeking to expand the number of total permitted beds at the site, and simply to maintain the current total that have been permitted for most of the lifespan of our CUP, 103 total beds.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCarroll.
Could you please help me understand something here in case I'm not getting it correctly? The beds that are available now are currently not operating due to a lack of funding,
The
correct?
emergency shelter beds, the 49 emergency shelter beds are not operating.
So they're considered empty?
They are
literally.
empty, yes.
And so if they're going to be used for the detox withdrawal program, does that mean that it's closed off for people that maybe don't have any issues with drug use but just have become homeless? Do they still have access to your services, or is it only withdrawal services?
These beds will only be focused on individuals with addiction issues. We do work with other individuals without addiction issues, and we provide other additional types of supports at other locations, both outside of Escondido as well as inside Escondido. We also work with other partner nonprofits and actually coordinate funding from 7 North County cities to provide access to pretty limited shelter options, but they are there. Most of those shelter options exist outside of Escondido. They do serve a large number. In fact, Escondido residents are the largest number of individuals accessing those shelters outside of Escondido.
Thank you for the clarification.
Commissioner Stevie?
Yeah, just this conditional use permit seems to be very narrowly tailored. Is there a reason? Narrowly tailored in the sense of like you're tying it to these contracts that you have at the moment. I assume these contracts fluctuate over time. You may receive them, you may not receive them. And then you have to come before us to like figure out what to do with these beds that are sitting there. So is there a reason you have to have these beds dedicated in this way for the permit? I'm just curious. I'm just trying to understand why you can't have more flexibility.
Yeah, I think we welcome the flexibility. And we came to this proposal after discussing with city staff and city leadership specifically what we were planning to provide.
So city staff and city, I'm trying to summarize your response. City staff and city leadership have encouraged you to specify usage.
I'm not going to characterize what they encouraged, but I do think we arrived at this narrow definition with the understanding that the more specific we are, the more clear it is exactly what will be provided as a result.
Okay, and then a question for city staff is, from here, it goes to city council.
Correct.
It's going to city council irrespective of how we vote.
Correct.
It's just a question of whether or not, in our opinion, within the narrow context of being planning commissioners, we think this is a good idea.
So you are a recommending body to the council?
Right, that's
Correct.
the capacity. Okay.
Any other questions? I've got one, if I could. And it kind of tears off of Commissioner Stevie's question about the flexibility, and if narrowing it helps you get to where you need to be easier, quicker, that's fine. Is there that much of a demand for what you're requesting? and that narrow definition, that you see in the foreseeable future, at least if there's funding, that will, you know, solve a need?
Yeah, there
Or at
is
least help?
there is a very high level of demand for these services. We would welcome, though, more flexibility. If the recommendation were to broaden that, we would certainly be welcome to engaging in that. If any changes do happen, whether they're because there's flexibility or because it's narrow and we are required to secure formal approval of any changes in the future from either planning commission or council. These things are going to happen in close partnership with city staff, with planning commission, with council, with PD. We operate at the pleasure of the city. Our conditional use permit has been a successful collaboration for almost the entirety of our operations at 550 West Washington. And when we hit a blip in the road this last year, we took that very seriously. And we've implemented a number of changes to address that. So if there's opportunity to utilize the beds in a different way, whether that's through flexibility recommended by commission or later by council, or in the future through amendments that are made, in either of those scenarios, it's all going to happen through close discussion and partnership between our organizations.
Okay, one more question. The funding that you have received, the 12 million, how long does that last?
The 12 million is a 5-year contract from the County of San Diego.
Okay, and then I'm probably assuming it'd get renewed as long as you were finding success.
Yeah, we do anticipate renewal beyond that time.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Spear and then McCarl.
The county is providing funding for this. If the county has, there are individuals outside of the city of Escondido, they are free to come here. There's nothing restricting them from coming and obtaining services here in Escondido. Is that correct?
The restriction would be bed availability. So the primary way that we bring individuals into those beds are through our outreach teams, which are focused here in Escondido. But if beds are available and an individual from another community is interested in those beds, they are certainly available to them, assuming they qualify. They have a medical clearance, a medical diagnosis for addiction treatment. This is a drug Medi-Cal program, so they have their insurance through Medi-Cal. Then they are certainly eligible.
And why is it only 14 days? Is that enough time to serve someone?
It's just the starting point. So it's a time of stabilization. It's a time of helping somebody safely withdraw from alcohol and or drugs. It's a time to begin treatment. We begin treatment as soon as an individual is physically able to. That often takes a few days given what their situation may be.
Sure.
For the individuals who successfully complete the detox and are interested in long-term treatment, we have a 100% rate of successfully connecting them to those programs. Those could be our own, those could be other providers, but it is the first step in a longer journey.
So the 14 days is really more the detox period, not the recovery period?
Yes.
Any questions?
That means if they wanted to continue, they would not be eligible to continue in that facility?
They would move into a longer-term residential treatment program. There are some individuals who are housed and are able to move into what we call an outpatient treatment program, where their addiction severity is such that an outpatient treatment program is the clinically appropriate level of service. Regardless of what their level of care is, those individuals are provided access to that level of care. That's that 100% rate of connection that I discussed. We do provide a 90-day residential treatment program in addition to what we're describing here at the 550 West Washington location. So some individuals will remain at the location and move over to that longer-term treatment program. Others will go to other providers in other regions.
So their treatment changes, but their location does not?
For some, their location will change.
So that would be the first pass was You said 14 days? And then another 90?
90 can be extended to as much as 6 months.
Okay.
And then after that, an individual will often, move into an outpatient treatment program and sober living. Re-enter the workforce, build up their income to be able to move out of sober living and into independent.
So if let's say 100% of them decided to stick around, they could stay the 14 days, they could stay the 90, they could stay up to 6 months potentially. Is there a period of time where all of a sudden they wouldn't qualify to remain, or?
At the end of 6 months, we do need to move them into another level of care. At that point, the most common next step is to move into a sober living home, which is a private residence that exists throughout the community with support for sober living, and then continued aftercare in an outpatient substance use disorder treatment program. Staffed very similar to what our residential treatment is staffed with. Registered and certified substance use disorder counselors, licensed mental health clinicians, medical director, and other support.
So if someone elected to leave the program, again, what mechanisms are there for them to, I mean, you offer, I think you mentioned that you offer, I guess, a free ride to wherever they came from. That's up to them whether they decide to, where they decide to go at that point is up to them, I assume. There's no.
This is not a lockdown program, so everyone has freedom of choice. I would describe it rather than a free ride as coordinated connection to their next destination. And when individuals are successfully completing treatment, that's finding the next treatment option. When individuals are deciding that this is not the time for them to continue in treatment, unfortunately, they're usually going back to wherever they came from and whoever they were using with previously. Our teams let them know that we are here for them, and when they're ready to move forward in treatment, we want to be able to be there to help them do that.
Any other questions?
Questions of staff, I do have.
Yeah. Go ahead, if you have questions of staff.
Okay. I have a question related to, let's shift gears here real quick. I was looking at, in the report, it talked about previous CUPs, there were over 30 CUP violations associated with the site. When did, and I think it was mentioned by Mr. Angel that last year, November, was the first notice of violation on that. The 30 CUPs, if they were noticed last November for the first time, when did they extend back to? When was the beginning of the CUP violations?
Sure, so I can actually go ahead and answer that question simply because I was the planner who worked on that January 15th item. So as we alluded to in the prior item, staff generally try to work with conditional use permit holders, operators, to abate issues from the standpoint of wanting to work through rather than go directly to a revocation or suspension or modification process. So there was a lot of work being done between Escondido Police Department, specifically the community oriented policing and problem solving unit. Give me a minute, I'll get it. The COPS unit. And the operator to abate those issues. During the time from, I believe, around 2022 to February of 2024, and then into summer and fall of 2024 generally was when the majority of those violations were observed.
So what was the process if they were observed beginning in 2022 and the notice of violation didn't occur until 2025?
End of 2024, I believe.
End of 2024. What was the process beginning in 2022?
Sure, so Development Services was not the lead on that, so I'll give you a high-level overview. It was actually the police department and the cops unit. So my understanding is that they had done some general citywide analysis and identified a hotspot within the city where calls for service were higher than normal. And so they investigated that area and started to conduct what the cops unit refers to as projects to abate those issues, work through potential nuisance issues or through these projects that they implement. They ended up implementing roughly 11 projects in the vicinity of Mission and Quince, kind of that T intersection where I think there used to be a Carl's Jr., the Lowe's, et cetera, down to where Quince and Washington generally are. They ended up with a lot of anecdotal conversations with folks that they were working and dealing with as part of those projects that pointed them to 550 West Washington. That led to opening of discussion and discourse between the cops unit and Interfaith as an operator, and it led to the cops unit opening up a project for 550 West Washington specifically. And so all of that is transpiring during this kind of end of 2022, 2023 timeframe. It culminates really, I think, around the fall of 2023, where I believe Interfaith and the cops unit engaged in a meeting and had discussions. My understanding is the cops unit shared the findings of their data with the operator, and there was a collaboration to work through this project. One of the concerns that the police department raised was that they weren't getting clear information responses that they were asking for throughout that time period. Not that the operator wasn't necessarily responsive, but just they would get responses and that would lead to additional questions, and it ended up culminating with the chief of police suspending the project due to the lack of the information being provided in a timely manner. All of this is a part of the City Council agenda report from January 15th. If you have any interest in going and finding more data on it, all of that is provided. But that is essentially what got us to the start of 2024 and the referral back to City Attorney's Office and code compliance and further documentation of code CUP violations.
Commissioner Spear, if I could just help you out here too. All of that got resolved back on January 15th at the City Council meeting. Kind of want to bring us back to what's being requested today, since those violations got already resolved by City Council.
I was more interested in a timeline.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll go ahead. Do we have speakers?
Yes, we received 16 registered opinions in favor, and we have 2 requests to speak on the item.
2 requests. Okay, if you could call them up, and if I could remind the speakers, just keep your comments to 3 minutes if we could.
Okay, first speaker is Verna Sundquist.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. So my name is Verna Sundquist. I've been a resident of Escondido for 25 years. I'm very concerned about our city, and I've been involved in many issues that have really trying to promote the city and to help it thrive. I'm actually a representative of the Interfaith Leaders Alliance, which we meet monthly. There's 10 to 12 representatives from different faith communities. We've been very involved in volunteering at Interfaith. We know a lot of the issues that are going on there. And many times we feel like we're just putting a Band-Aid on something when something more could be done, especially when we know that a lot of the homelessness, the leading cause is substance abuse. And unless these people get into some kind of treatment, they remain on the street, and they remain on the street longer. And it became a safety issue for our city and and the residents around them. So we're pleading for you to approve this CUP. We know that I think this will really help meet people off the street, and they're also going to be getting more other services to help them to get into housing and maybe get into a job, so they can become productive citizens. So by approving this CUP modification, you are investing in getting to the root cause of homelessness and helping making our city stronger and safer. This will also reduce some of the pressure on the emergency responders who are constantly out on the street trying to resolve some of those issues. So we hope that we can assist, if this CUP is approved, to make the city safer and to make it stronger. I urge you all to support this proposal and help create a healthier, safer, and more useful community for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Chantalyn Lau.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chantalyn Lau. I am the program manager for the Detox and also the SAMHSA RWC outreach program at Interfaith. So every day I get a pleasure to work with the staff, over 30 of us, trying to get people off the street and provide them with addiction services. So just a little bit of statistics. As of July 2024, there's only 78 withdrawal management beds in the whole San Diego County. And they serve uninsured and also Medi-Cal clients. And that is in the middle of the whole pandemic. There was 3,100 people that died in 2019 from overdose. So in 2022, I don't know if you've seen the report, San Diego County is actually higher than the national rate of death, and also in California. So we have the highest death rates of overdose. And that's why we do this. At Interfaith, how we run our program, it's a 14-day program, and it's in a controlled environment. They're there, and for the first 72 hours, we watch them every 30 minutes. We make sure they're safe. We make sure they're not using. And then on the 4th day, they started to meet groups. So they are required to attend groups, and we start working with them in planning and discharge. And at discharge, we call different places, residential program, outpatient programs, to make sure that we have a bed for them to go after. So that's why when we say 70% success rates, that means we actually got them a place, we drop them off, and we hand them over. We don't just say, oh, you got an intake day. We actually make sure that they go to a different place, whether it's a 90-day program where they can start recovery, and then from there they can go to another 6-month outpatient program. So, in short, we do our best to help them get their mental health services, mass services, medical services, while they're with us in 14 days. So the rate, we're working really fast at making sure that they're there, they get to a better place after, and it's gonna be, that's on their journey to recovery. So I just want to say the bottom line is we can do more, and I think we should do more, and we want to be able to say, yes, we have a bed, yes, we're here for you, yes, we have the capacity to take care, and these are people that need help. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? With that, we'll close the public testimony and open it up to discussion amongst the planning commissioners. Who wants to start?
I'll start. In my extended family, I've actually had 2 family members that had addiction problems. And I learned that even with insurance and coming from middle-income families, the obstacles they had to face, and sometimes be on the waiting list to try to get for detox and the recovery services. So I think this is a great addition to the community. I would welcome having these extra beds and these extra services. And I also would want to mention, I would welcome anyone who's an addict who needs detox and wants services is welcome to come to Escondido and seek these services. I know there's a mindset for many people, among fellow citizens in Escondido, that think that it should be limited only to residents of Escondido. But I disagree. is this is not an Escondido problem, this is a human problem. This is a human crisis. And anything my community can do to reach out and help anyone in our region, to me, makes me proud of Escondido, makes me proud of the Interfaith Crisis Center. I admire the work you've done. I admire how you've steered the program since you've joined it. I'm sorry that in the past year, the city should have been hanging medals on the Interfaith Crisis Center and just throwing darts at the Interfaith Crisis Center. So I'm glad that now that the city and the Interfaith Crisis is working together as a team for a positive outcome in the future, and I'm going to enthusiastically support your application.
Commissioner Spear.
Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I think there's common ground in your comments that probably everyone in this room would agree with. However, I would vary from that slightly in perspective because we represent the city of Escondido. That includes all the residents of Escondido. My concerns lie not in the importance of providing services for those that need it. These particular services I think is important. Our perspective, however, is how those services are provided and how it impacts Escondido. And this is my concern, is that Escondido becomes a lopsided provider of services for the county of San Diego. When that happens, the individuals that need this care come to Escondido to obtain those services. When we become a magnet for providing those services, we deal with the problems that come with that demographic as well. So, in looking at this, I studied this and said, well, what information is there, and do we really have to dig into information about what impacts this brings to our city when it wasn't but this year that we were dealing with notices of violations for longstanding crime problems surrounding the facility. And with all of that, with all of the problems we actually have seen surrounding the facility in Escondido already, that is not for debate, that is a fact. We're now being asked to say, let's convert the beds that were for homeless people and convert them for the use for addiction recovery. And what is that going to do for crime and problems surrounding the facility? What is that going to bring to Escondido? I think those are the valid questions that we need to ask. When I hear that we have 78 in San Diego County, and we're talking about providing 59 beds in Escondido, that's not for Escondido's problem. That's for San Diego County's problem. And I believe that we, representing the city of Escondido, need to be concerned about what does this do to our city, and what do the residents of our city want from us.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Commissioner?
Yeah, let's go with Commissioner Correll to get motion to me first.
So right now we have 0 beds at your facility for this, right?
10 permanent beds.
10 permanent beds right now?
For the withdrawal management services.
Got it. And in the city, there's probably not very many others, I'm guessing?
There are, in the city of Escondido?
Yeah.
There are other beds
Okay.
by 2 other providers. There's also other beds in Vista, Oceanside, and just south of us in San Diego.
Got it. So my perception as somebody who drives 200 to 300 miles a day through Escondido a lot is I see a lot of homeless drug addicts on the streets of Escondido, sleeping on the sides of Center City Parkway, sleeping at Sprouts, sleeping at Jimbo's, sleeping at Lowe's, or high or whatever they're doing in the middle of the day, and they're passed out laying on the side of the road, not moving. So to me, I think that we have an urgent need for beds for those people in Escondido right now, for those 59 beds, because those people are currently laying on our streets today. So I see the need for it being something that's urgently needed for those people that you see all over town right now that don't have those beds to go to.
I have looked at the numbers in the cities of San Diego County that provide services and the numbers of homeless or addiction. And they mimic the cities that are providing services. You have
I think it's kind of everywhere, right?
Well, no, it's not. What are the numbers in Poway?
But we're not providing the services right now. We're about to provide the
I'm saying,
services.
look at the numbers of homeless and problems that they bring, and look at where they're located in San Diego County by the censuses. And they mimic the cities that provide services.
No, I understand the point you're making, but we have a need for it. Like, it's for instance, like in Salt Lake City, you go there and there's a huge homeless population because the church provides for them. So they go there intentionally to get, that's your point, right?
My point is that we're drawing people from San Diego County to come to Escondido, the homeless or the in this case, the addicted, to come to Escondido because we're increasing the number of services we provide.
Got it, but they're here, but they're also here already and they don't know about this meeting, right?
Well, I don't have those numbers. Do you? I mean, I don't have them.
I'm pretty sure they're not reading the Times Advocate.
All I have is the numbers that I looked at in terms of the cities that are providing services and the numbers that follow.
I understand.
Commissioner Justin, and then we'll go to Commissioner Stevie.
I think that Commissioner Spear has a valid concern. But I think that Escondido, you asked the question, what will this do for Escondido? I think this will make Escondido the gold standard in the county for how to provide for people who are addicted. And you know what? We're talking about people here. And wherever there's people, there's going to be problems. But these are people that need help, people that are in trouble. And I think we're going to end up being the gold standard because with only 78 beds, it was 78, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a great program.
Commissioner Stevie?
I just had a clarifying question for you, maybe two. One, would you amend this CUP in any way to address your concern, or would you just vote against it? I'm just trying to get your pulse.
Okay, my pulse is this. I'm very concerned that we don't have to go back very far to see a record of services already provided that were recently noticed a violation and only recently were addressed.
But I think you would agree per the record that once that was a period of time in which there was a set of concerns which in a 2-year window, 3-year window were fully addressed. You would have to go back, if we set that aside and acknowledged it and said, okay, that happened, you'd have to go back pretty far to find the next set of concerns, yeah?
No, well, I would say the notice of violation is only a slow boiling point of a long string of problems that the city encountered. That's one issue is that. How long is it going to be before this approval will result in a number of problems, and what is that length of process going to be before that is addressed?
So it was, if I'm understanding the timelines correctly, it was about a period of 40 years before the boiling point was reached.
I don't have the full, I asked the question of when those 30 problems existed. I don't have the full history in front of me of, what's the track record of problems. What I think, if we could ask the police, they would probably give us a better idea. Hey, they know where the problems are. They're focused around these facilities.
So if we escalate, this goes to the point. So going back to my original question, are you at this point inclined to modify the CUP, or as like you would say, I would approve this, but for these modifications, or are you inclined just to say no, given your concerns, which I understand?
Great question. My concerns stem from why is Escondido providing all of the services? Why are we attracting all of the issue here in our city?
Yeah.
And I don't see anything. I don't see any modifications that would ameliorate that. Yeah. I'm just saying, why are we saying let's do more?
And okay, so that makes sense. So it feels like you're inclined to vote against it. Okay. And then the second question I have for you as a clarifying matter is, do you see a relationship between solving addiction and solving homelessness? Or do you feel like they're separate? Because it felt like you made a distinction in your argument, like we have homelessness and now we're dealing with addiction. Do you see those as connected?
I'm really not an expert inclined to form an opinion on that.
Okay.
I'm suggesting this from my vantage point. Both of them are problems. Both of them bring crime and problems. Those are clear. And both of those, or either of those, is disproportionately cast onto our city.
Yeah. How do you feel about the fact that at present this matter is, there are some matters that come before us that we deal with and, you know, it's just us. And then kind of what we say goes and that's the end of it. In this instance, it's about to go to city council. Do you feel like that changes your perception at all, given that, frankly, this is going to become a political matter and they're the ones who are going to be on the hook for it?
Yeah. I believe that city council, and I've seen city council operate this way, and I imagine it's fairly typical, but city council say, how did the planning commission vote on this? And that weighs into the perspective.
I agree. Okay. Okay. I have no further questions, but I would like to make a comment.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
So, just at a super high level, I understand Commissioner Spears coming from. My only concern with this current matter is that it feels like it constrains the operations of Interfaith, which I view to be fundamentally a good faith actor, and having had a strong relationship with the city such that when there was a series of issues that manifested, they and the city got together, had hard conversations, and figured it out. But CUPs are hard. To the earlier conversation we had, CUPs are hard to modify, and they're tying the CUP to a specific contract of a 5-year length. And so my personal inclination is to approve it with a recommendation to City Council that they consider giving a little more latitude to Interfaith, because it feels like there are going to be beds that are unused because they don't fall within the specific contract. And I would kind of like Interfaith to have the ability to use all the beds and to solve the homelessness problem with all the beds, however they're going to do it. If it happens to be addiction, great. If it happens to be homeless shelter, which we're losing that, great. But I would personally, just putting it out there, would like to see them have more flexibility.
I would second that.
Vice Chair Barber, you had a comment?
Actually, I was ready to make a motion. So this was just added.
Before you make a motion, I'd like to make some comments and then we can look for a motion, unless you got other comments.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I too appreciate all the comments from my fellow commissioners. This is really important to the city of Escondido. And homelessness and drug addiction, that's a horrible thing. You know, I think we all know somebody or have a family member that has fallen into one or both of those or other multiple categories where assistance is needed. What I really appreciate what's happened lately is because of the added communication between city staff, the police department, and Interfaith. It sounds, based on what I watched at the January 15th hearing, a lot of that, if not all of it, had been resolved. So I'm really happy that that occurred before Interfaith came to this body to ask for the modification in the CUP. I think that's an appropriate method in which to implement a conditional use permit. It's happened in the past on other projects where they were in the middle of violations, but they're coming in asking for a modification. So I was happy to hear that the January 15th meeting occurred. All of City Council showed their support, which I think should come into play when we are looking at making a decision as well on something that they're reviewing simultaneously. If you look at the number on this PL 240335, this came before what went before City Council in their PL 24 and their numbering sequence. This got held up so that they could resolve their violations. City council's well aware of this. You know, and certainly, and I hope the city council listens to what we say during our discussions, because it's not televised. They have to listen to the audio, and sometimes that's really difficult, because the comments that we make at this time not only influence the way we vote, it should be influencing the way the city council votes, just like Commissioner Spear had indicated that our comments are important. With that said, look, there's currently an allowable certain number of beds at this facility. It's already allowed. It's how they're being utilized at this point, and it's all based on funding. So the 49 beds that are for homeless, there's no funding. But now there's funding for something that is in the realm of what is needed, which is for addiction. The addiction problem is out of control. So my feeling is, and I agree with Commissioner Spear, that I don't want us to be a magnet, but at the same time, we've got a problem right here, right now, that there is a demand and a need for those 59 beds as we sit today. That's what I believe when I'm looking, and I drive around the city of Escondido, you can see them standing there, and they're begging for money, and they're barely standing up because they're probably addicted to some drug or another. And it's horrible to watch. So for me, I'm in support of this. And to Commissioner Stevie's point, the flexibility, I like the flexibility idea. What I don't want to have happen is we end up upsetting this apple cart that's been in discussion for a year, that there's this narrow definition for how the 59 beds are going to be utilized. I like flexibility without having to come back to this body if it is within a good, secure box of providing the services that are wanted and needed. So that's my...
How would you feel if we just made it a simple recommendation that the city council just give a second look at what flexibility would look like with the applicant? It's not a formal, hey, we demand this language be included. It's a, with a approval with a recommendation to city council to consider broadening the scope of the bed usage and allowing the applicant to determine highest and best usage based off of things like funding or whatever.
I'll tell you what, let's get staff's recommendation on this, or at least opinion. In your staff report that you give to city council, what I would prefer is that it not get embedded into this, the conditions for this conditional use permit, but I would like it conveyed very clearly to the city council that I think a majority of the planning commission, I don't know, I think it'd be a good idea that there be some flexibilities for those 49 beds. And I don't know what sort of language would be needed and what city council would support. But by a show of hands, is there any sort of agreement that there should be that flexibility? I like it.
I like it.
Sure.
I would first want to ask, half of this partnership that's developed between the state and interfaith is sitting there. I'd like to know if the applicant would be concerned if we make such a recommendation, if that might upset the apple cart, as Commissioner Brown.
No, I think if that was the recommendation, we would work with city staff and city leadership to see if they support that.
Okay, then I
and reach
raise my
an
hand.
agreement.
As a point of clarification, just because I want to make sure I understood Commissioner Stevie's point that has led to this discussion. To clarify, the requested operational change is to eliminate the emergency shelter beds and allow for withdrawal management services, but not necessarily withdrawal management services that are explicit only to this county grant. So I just want to clarify that the allowance of the CUP as recommended by staff is withdrawal management services.
Let me make sure I really understand. The CUP seems to care about how the beds are utilized. Is that accurate? And I'm saying perhaps we should not.
Yeah, because it seems it's based on funding.
Yeah.
So if, for the next 5 years, there's going to be funding for the drug addiction type need. But after that 5 years, that funding may dry up, and now there's funding for the homeless
Well, and
category,
actually,
or some other category.
am I mistaken, you actually don't have funding for all the beds?
Correct.
So if we were to approve it right now, you would have permission to use all of the beds for a specific purpose, but not the funding to do so.
Correct.
So you would have beds being unused.
Correct.
That's what I'm trying to fix.
Could I ask staff, how would we word that in a motion?
With the goal, as Chair Weiler spoke, to not
Yes.
condition,
And
but
conditions.
make a general recommendation.
And as Commissioner Stevie has advocated.
I have a
I
question.
think it should be.
I think what Commissioner, what Chair Weiler was suggesting was that it not be part of the motion, but that staff, in the staff report to the City Council, make note of the fact that the commission discussed this and the majority of the commission raised their hands that they would like to, the council to think about some flexibility.
I just think our discussion needs to be conveyed.
So the motion would be to approve with that recommendation.
Does the current motion, I mean, does the current
Sure.
request exclude the present use when it's converted to new use?
That's what it appears.
To keep specificity in the request, then can the request be considered to simply add this use to the existing use? So that it doesn't delete the old use, and it gives specificity to both of those uses. It's
No, like
not
I
just a
said,
blank check, in other words, it's very specific.
Yeah, again,
We're still being specific, we still want more flexibility.
Well, I think we're kicking this up to City Council and letting so this is where I'm like, hey, thank God we don't have to get super political about it, and let the people who get elected deal with the politics, frankly. That's kind of how I'm positioning myself on it.
I'm just wondering if this concept is an interesting one, but doesn't there need to be specificity in each of these CUPs? Can we, is that ambiguity even doable?
I think in light of whatever problems there were that in the past that got resolved recently, the specificity is probably a good thing.
Yeah, but I don't think you can cover every specific instance.
Exactly. So right now, we're just dealing with this.
Yeah, and I mean, the onus is on the applicant. If they see a need in the community to bring a request for a modification.
Right.
But we can let the elected officials, in coordination with the applicant, come up with the language that gives it appropriate scope, while also giving a little more flexibility, so we don't have to go through this whole process every time.
Yeah, just a moment, because I don't think we're going to open up public testimony again. So hang on, Mr. Ferguson. So where are you going?
Where am I going?
Yeah, where are you kind of leading us?
Oh,
because I know we're kind of.
Yeah. If I'm going to put a motion on the table, the motion would be to approve the CUP as stated, provided that staff also notes in their formal report the recommendation by the majority of council that council work with the applicant to perhaps expand the scope of the conditional use permit such that they can make full utilization of the beds as it makes sense for the services they provide.
Wow, that would be the whole motion?
But in all respect, Chair, there's already a motion and a second.
Oh, I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
I just second that one too.
Yeah, I second that one too. I was more asking like the motion.
Just to clarify, he wasn't making a motion, he was stating that the motion could be this. Yes,
I
so that
second
was
what Commissioner Stevie said.
Wait a minute, I want to get clarification on the motion. Because
that was a lot.
The motion, the motion is to approve.
Yes.
With the changes that were identified by staff.
Correct.
That's the motion.
That's
correct.
Our recommendation off to the side
is
that City Council consider the discussion about being more flexible.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yep.
That's what I think he
yeah.
said.
That is what I intended to say.
I just wanted to make sure.
I second
Do we,
it already.
do we think we have the motion, which is
Yeah,
to
let me just
approve
clarify.
with staff
To approve with
recommendation?
staff recommendation, because the staff report will reflect what the discussion was. That doesn't need to be part of the motion, so yes, but the motion is to approve, as I understand it, is to approve with staff recommendation.
Well, yeah, I don't want to, gosh, we're late and beating a dead horse. I just want to make sure that it's not sort of like casually referenced in the report, but there's this sort of additional stronger layer that simply says, we have concerns about the limited scope of the CUP and would love it for the city. We would recommend.
Can the commissioners write a letter to the council?
I mean, we could show up at the council.
You can
Right.
show up to public
There's a way
comment.
to maybe just put
You're
it
free
bold.
to, I mean, you can always write a public comment letter, you can show
Yeah.
up and
Yeah.
testify as in the public comment
I think
period.
that would be helpful as well.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Stevie. Do we have a second?
I did.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Burrell. If we can, any more discussion? If we could go ahead and get the vote.
Commissioner Barber?
Yes.
Commissioner Macaro?
Yes.
Commissioner Spear?
No.
Commissioner Weiler?
Yes.
Commissioner Jester?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevie?
Yes.
Commissioner Correll?
Yes.
All right, the vote is 6-1 to approve.
All right. Congratulations. Good luck with the city council.
Officially adjourned. Oh, sorry.
Still have the planner.
I'm shooting good.
All right, let's go ahead and get through the rest of this.
You have 30 seconds. Go.
Future agenda items, any planning commission want to bring anything up?
We got the.
Seeing none? Any more oral communications? Seeing none? Any reports from planning commissioners? None? City planners report.
Just that the next meeting on 2/11, I believe, will be canceled. So there will be no first meeting in February. If there is a second meeting in February, I will let you know via email.
All right. That's it. Meeting adjourned.